Chapter 122. Thinking of this, I became completely excited. I threw the hot metal plate to the side and returned to my bed. I held the dark green bead in my hand and continued to absorb it. I could only absorb a small amount of this dark green energy at a time. It was very little, but many a little makes a lot. I wasn't discouraged and slowly absorbed it bit by bit. I didn't stop until Zhang Wenfei came back at night. The strange thing was that as soon as Zhang Wenfei saw me, he frowned slightly. After thinking for a while, he asked me in confusion, "Zhou Yi, your realm is higher than mine. Although I couldn't sense your realm before, I could always sense the surging Dao Qi in your body. But why can't I sense the fluctuation of Dao Qi in your body at all today?" I was stunned. The Dao Qi pillar in my body was still wrapped by the dark green energy. Could it be that this energy isolated the Dao Qi in my body so that others couldn't see my realm? Thinking about it carefully, it was really possible. Just like that dark green bead. It clearly contained such a strong power. But if it wasn't for Tong Tong's reminder, I wouldn't have felt it at all. The power from before had already shocked me. Now, I found another effect that could hide one's aura. What could this ordinary-looking bead hide? I smiled and said to Zhang Wenfei, "This is because I dispersed the Dao Qi in my body just now. Why don't you try to feel it again?" As I said that, I mobilized the dark green energy and hid it beside the Dao Qi pillar. In an instant, the surging Dao Qi surged out of my body again. Zhang Wenfei nodded, as if he understood. He didn't ask anymore and returned to his bed. Originally, I wanted to rest, but at that moment, I suddenly felt the dark green energy in my body suddenly separate from the Dao Qi pillar. Next to the Dao Qi pillar, it formed a dark green light pillar that was as thin as a silk thread. I was stunned. The dark green energy was still the same. It was just that the shape had changed a little. However, this light pillar that was as thin as a silk thread was exactly the same as the Dao Qi thread that I had formed when I had just entered the Earth Master realm. What did this mean? This meant that there was another power in my body that wasn't Dao Qi, but was even stronger than Dao Qi. If this light thread continued to develop, would it eventually form something similar to the Dao Qi pillar? If that was the case, there would be another Dao Qi pillar in my body. More importantly, this strange power could actually fuse with Taoist Qi. At that time, I would still be in the dragon summoning realm. Who could be my opponent? Han Wenan? That was impossible. In a world of metaphysics, anyone would know that there could only be one Dao Qi pillar. Just like the meridians of a person's soul, a person could only form one. This was an unchanging truth since ancient times. What was this dark green bead? Why would there be another one in my body? No matter how I thought about it, I couldn't understand the reason behind it. However, it was still a good thing. I sat there, feeling extremely excited. However, after I'd calmed down, I suddenly thought of another problem. This dark green energy was absorbed from the dark green bead that the golden head had given me. It couldn't be obtained from any other place. I lowered my head to look at the dark green bead. Since I couldn't see its energy fluctuations, I couldn't estimate whether it had enough energy to support me to the Qi gathering pillar realm or not. After thinking for a long time, I suddenly thought of another problem. This dark green energy was absorbed from the dark green bead that the golden head gave me. It couldn't be obtained from any other place. I sat there and pondered for a long time. In the end, I suddenly thought that since this dark green energy could be combined with the Taoist Qi, could I also transfer the Taoist Qi to the other thread of light? It was highly possible. My heart started to beat faster. If that was the case, I wouldn't need to worry about whether the dark green bead had enough energy or not. I just needed Dao Qi. Moreover, I was going to observe the true dragon vein. When the time came, I would fill up both Dao Qi pillars and start the dragon energy baptism. At that time, I would have at least twice the amount of Dao Qi compared to others to break through the meridians. The pressure point realm required Dao Qi to break through the meridians. At that time, the more Dao Qi I had, the more meridians I could open. This means that I have a high chance of opening up even more meridians. If my talent could only open half a meridian, then I would be able to open a whole meridian. If my talent could open a whole meridian, then I would be able to open 2 meridians. At that time, Even if my talent wasn't as good as those peerless geniuses, I would still have twice the chance. How much worse would I be compared to them? This time, I couldn't calm down. As I sat there, I was so excited that I started to sweat. In this state, I didn't dare to move my Tao Chi. I just lay on the bed. It wasn't until late at night that I finally calmed down. At this moment, Zhang Wenfei had fallen asleep. I sat up on the bed and closed my eyes. I read the Calm Heart mantra a few times to confirm that my body and mind were calm. Then, I moved the Tao energy in the Tao energy column, sending it to the other dark green light. Just as I had imagined, the dark green light thread didn't resist the Tao Chi. Instead, it happily accepted the Tao Chi into its own light thread. Not long after, a new light pillar appeared next to the original Tao Chi pillar. However, it was dark green and the original light was mixed together. It looked a little dark. However, it didn't matter. My conjecture had been proven. It was completely feasible. I moved the dark green energy once again and moved it to the original Tao Chi pillar. At first, it was fine. However, when the dark green energy disappeared, the new Tao Chi pillar couldn't be maintained anymore. It immediately dispersed and gathered on the original Tao Chi pillar. It seemed that the foundation of this new Tao Chi pillar was the dark green energy. Without that energy, it couldn't be maintained with just Tao Chi. Then, I repeated the previous process and divided the Tao Chi pillar into two. After I was done, I sat there and furrowed my brows. An idea that shocked even myself popped up in my mind. Previously, when the green energy on the new light pillar was removed, the light pillar did not disappear until all the green energy was removed. Only then did the light pillar disappear. What if I didn't move the green energy to the original Tao Chi pillar and let it create a new light pillar? What would happen? My heart was pounding. Under such circumstances, it wasn't safe to move the Tao Chi. However, I didn't want to wait any longer. I suppressed my excitement and removed a part of the dark green energy from the light pillar and moved it elsewhere. In the blink of an eye, the third light pillar was formed in my body. It actually worked. I hurriedly moved the Tao Chi and divided it equally among the three light pillars. Still, there was no problem. If there was a third light pillar, could there be a fourth, a fifth, 100th? If that was the case, how many meridians would I be able to open in the future? Would I have to open all 8 extraordinary meridians and become an 8-meridian Earth Master? I didn't dare to think further. I gritted my teeth and excitedly continued to separate the dark green energy. Soon, the 4th light pillar appeared. The 5th light pillar appeared. The 6th pillar. When the 6th pillar of light appeared, the first pillar of light formed by the dark green energy suddenly dissipated. The chi of the way and the dark green energy all dissipated and quickly gathered on the other pillars of chi of the way. Could it be that the dark green energy wasn't enough? I observed carefully. The 4 newly formed energy pillars had different amounts of dark green energy. The one with the least amount of dark green energy was very little. It was only 1/10 of the light pillar that had just dissipated. To confirm, I absorbed some energy from the dark green bead and tried to create the 6th light pillar. The result was the same. It seemed that it wasn't a problem of the amount of dark green energy. I tried many other methods and found that it was impossible to succeed. It seemed that I could only maintain 5 Tao Chi pillars. Even so, I was excited. 5 Tao Chi pillars meant 5 times the amount of Tao Chi others had. If I had the talent of a 1-meridian Earth Master, I would be able to open 5 meridians. That would be even more terrifying than Yi Pianpian. What peerless genius! What Han Wenan! What Lu Jinyang! They wouldn't be able to compare to me. Even if my original talent was only half a meridian, I would be able to open 2.5. That would be close to Yi Pianpian's talent. I wouldn't dare to compare to those famous people in history, but at least I would be able to amaze everyone at the Rising Phoenix gathering. I was so excited that I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. I lay there with my mind full of wild thoughts. Ever since I came into contact with metaphysics, I had always thought that my talent was mediocre. I had relied on the death scripture to progress smoothly. However, I didn't dare to have any wild hopes for the future. Only now did I feel that I might be able to make a name for myself in the metaphysics world. I didn't do anything for the rest of the night. I just lay there and stared at the ceiling, smiling foolishly. It wasn't until the next day that I finally calmed down. No matter what, talent was something in the future. It couldn't be used now. Before talent could be considered an ability, everything else was useless. After Zhang Wenfei got up, he continued to talk with his colleagues from the Metaphysics Association. I sat in my room and calmed myself down. Then I continued to absorb the dark green energy. Although I couldn't form a new Tao Qi pillar, the dark green energy itself had great power. After absorbing it, I could use it more freely. The day passed quickly. Zhang Wenfei returned to his room that night. This time, he didn't come back alone. He came with the other members of the Guangdong Metaphysics Association. They all had angry expressions on their faces, and their steps were hurried. After entering the room, I noticed that they were carrying a person. I lowered my head and saw that it was Su Shuxing. His face was dark, and his eyes were closed. It was obvious that he had fainted. What's going on? Chapter 123. The Yunnan branch did this? I didn't have time to ask. I asked them to put Su Shuxing on the bed. Then I went to check his body. Su Shuxing's face darkened. At first glance, I thought he was poisoned. After a closer look, I found that he was indeed poisoned. However, it wasn't a simple case of poisoning. He had been hit by poisonous Tao energy, which was why he was showing symptoms of being poisoned. I had heard that some geomancy masters didn't have magic tools to use, and their Tao energy or talismans weren't powerful enough. That was why they had to find another way. When they cultivated their Tao energy, they had to take poisons to force the poison into their Tao energy and fuse it with the Tao energy. This way, the Tao energy could carry the poison and increase its power. When I heard about this, I thought it was unbelievable. If the Tao energy wasn't pure enough, it would affect one's future progress. Moreover, it would be much more difficult to control the magic tools. I didn't expect that someone would do this in real life. After finding out the reason, I moved the Tao energy in my body and transferred it to Su Shuxing's body. Tao energy was a very powerful energy. As long as the cultivator had the Tao energy to protect him, ordinary poisons couldn't harm him. Su Shuxing was poisoned because someone had scattered the Tao energy in his body. After I transferred my Tao energy into his body, Su Shuxing woke up. He didn't have time to talk. He sat cross-legged and moved the Tao energy in his body to slowly expel the poison. I heaved a sigh of relief and sat down on a nearby chair. Su Shuxing, what happened? Zhang Wenfei's face was still full of resentment. There's a public area not far from the dormitory area. Today, we felt bored, so we went out to sit for a while. Coincidentally, we met the people from the Yunnan branch. We didn't pay attention to them at first, but they sat not far away from us and purposely said that they were going to observe the true dragon vein in a few days. They even said that some of the branches were ranked last, and they didn't know if one of them would successfully reach the acupoint realm in the end. After listening to him, Su Shuxing couldn't help but stand up and argue with them. In the end, both sides quarreled and almost started a fight. However, since the people from the headquarters were there, they didn't fight. After that, the people of the Yunnan branch left first. We thought it was over. Unexpectedly, when we were on the way back to the dormitory area, we were stopped by Chiwen and his people. This time, there was no one from the headquarters. Chiwen attacked directly. He wasn't very strong, but I was injured and couldn't fight back. The others were no match for him. In the end, Su Shuxing was seriously injured, and the others were more or less injured, Su Shuxing said. Yunnan branch by Chiwen. I still had some impressions of this person. At that time, I felt that he was thin and small and looked very wretched. As expected, one's appearance was born from one's heart. His methods were also very shameless. You didn't report this to the headquarters? I asked with a frown. Zhang Wenfei shook his head. The headquarters has a written rule that anyone who causes trouble here, regardless of the reason, will be immediately expelled. If the headquarters found out about this, all of us would be expelled. That's why we didn't dare to report it. We could only suffer in silence. At this time, Su Shuxing also got rid of the poison in his body. He struggled to get up from the bed and said weakly, Bai Chiwen used this rule to sneak attack us. If I'm not wrong, they will hide in their rooms for the next few days. They won't let us find a chance to take revenge. That's right. Zhang Wenfei nodded. He slammed his fist on the table and angrily said, If I wasn't injured, I would have made those bastards pay the price. But now it's too late. I'm afraid we won't be able to find a chance to take revenge. The others also had resentful expressions. Some of them even suggested that we directly go to the Yunnan branch's room and fight to the death with them. In any case, we were the last ones to observe the true dragon's vein. We might as well die together. Before I could say anything, Su Shuxing shook his head and said, We don't know what we're doing. The people from Yunnan branch don't have much talent. Even if they come here, they're just here to accompany the crown prince. If we perish together with them, we'll be the ones to suffer. I was surprised. Su Shuxing had a fiery temper. I had seen it more than once. How could he be so calm this time? Everyone became silent. Our Guangdong branch was ranked 8th. We were one of the top branches in the country. If we perished together with the Yunnan branch, it would be too much of a loss. But if we didn't do this, what else could we do? Should we just admit defeat? At this time, Su Shuxing suddenly grinned and said, My talent isn't high. I can't compare to Zhou, Yi, and Zhang Wenfei. Moreover, I'm also injured. I'm afraid it will affect my ability to observe the true dragon's vein. How about this? I'll simply give up this opportunity and go to the headquarters to report this matter. In any case, I'm the one who's seriously injured. Although you guys were there, you didn't do anything. When the time comes, I'll exchange for those Yunnan bastards. It won't be a loss. How can we do that? Zhang Wenfei hurriedly refused. The others didn't want to either. However, Su Shuxing seemed to have steeled his heart. No matter what, he wouldn't listen. He immediately endured the pain and went to find the headquarters. In the end, I pulled him back and said with a smile, Don't be so impulsive. There are many ways to deal with them. Why do you have to use this method of killing 10,000 enemies and injuring 8,000 yourself? They did such a thing during the ranking competition. I didn't go to find them, but they came to find us first. They really don't know what's good for them. As soon as I said that, Zhang Wenfei was the first to understand what I meant. He turned around and frowned at me. Joey, what do you mean? Are you going to find them? I nodded. Of course. But they will definitely stay in their rooms for the next few days and won't come out. If you go to find them, there are 10 of them. If you go alone, Zhang Wenfei's voice sounded hesitant. I smiled and joked. You're looking down on me. I defeated Han Wan and a few days ago. Do you think the 10 people from the Yunnan branch can beat me? This time, Su Shuxing spoke first. But if you use the Yin Yang Yama pen, the commotion will be too big. It's very likely that the Metaphysics Association will notice it. I shook my head. I don't need the Yama pen to deal with them. You don't need the Yama pen? Zhang Wenfei looked at me solemnly. Zhou Yi, I know that you're powerful, but Bai Chiwen isn't to be trifled with. In terms of Dao Qi, Bai Chiwen is far inferior to you. However, his Dao Qi contains poison. It'll be very troublesome to deal with him. Moreover, there are 10 of them. Their combined Dao Qi will definitely be more than yours. Even if you use the Yama pen, it'll still be troublesome to deal with the 10 of them. Let's not talk about not using the Yama pen. In my opinion, we should wait for Su Shuxing and I to recover from our injuries. Then, we can go together before they go to observe the true dragon vein. As long as we're careful, it'll be possible to avoid being discovered by the people from the headquarters. What he said made sense, but that was before I had obtained that strange dark green power. Now that I had that power, the number of bastards in the Yunnan branch would double. I wouldn't even need to use Yama's brush to deal with them. However, I couldn't explain this to them, so I could only pretend to give up on taking revenge by myself. I shook my head and said, All right, this matter isn't urgent. Su Shuxing and Zhang Wenfei are still injured. Let's go back and rest first. We'll gather tomorrow morning to discuss this matter and come up with a plan. Currently, my prestige in the Guangzhou branch was very strong. After I said that, the others didn't have any objections. They temporarily separated and returned to their respective rooms to rest. After the others left, Zhang Wenfei sat on the bed and remained silent for a while. Then he sighed and said, It's all my fault. I let those clowns in the Yunnan branch step on our heads and steal our spots. They even provoked us. Damn it. I didn't know how to comfort him, so I walked over and patted his shoulder, telling him to rest early. Zhang Wenfei sat there and sighed for a long time. In the end, he could only lie down and sleep angrily. After he slept, I did some simple exercises. I told Zhang Wenfei that I was going to check on Su Shuxing's injuries. Then I got up and left. After I left, I didn't go to find Su Shuxing. Instead, I went directly to the Gui area. Although the Yunnan branch had taken our spot in the ranking competition, their rooms hadn't changed. They were still staying in the last few rooms in the Gui area. When I got there, I didn't know which room Bai Chiwen was in, so I randomly picked a room and knocked on the door. However, no one came to open the door. Feeling helpless, I could only walk along the Gui area and search from the back to the front. I found a room with the number Gui Shun. Before I could knock on the door, I heard some chaotic noises inside. I couldn't find anyone in the other rooms, and this room was very messy. I guess that all the members of the Yunnan branch were gathered in this room. It was better this way. I didn't have to search room by room. Chapter 124. After reaching the Earth Master Realm, under the nourishment of Tao Qi, a Feng Shui master's bodily functions were much stronger than those of ordinary people. Even in such a noisy environment, the people in the room could still hear me knocking on the door. Soon, they quieted down. After a while, there was no movement in the room, as though they were discussing something. I wasn't in a hurry, so I stood there and waited patiently. About a minute later, there was finally the sound of footsteps coming towards the door. Soon, the door opened and the skinny Bai Chiwen stood in front of me. After seeing me, Bai Chiwen's pupils slightly shrunk. Then, he gave me a fake smile and said, "So, it's Taoist Zhou Yi from the Guangdong branch. What brings you here in the middle of the night?" His voice was the same as before, sharp and strange. After saying that, he craned his neck to look behind me. I knew that he wanted to see if the others from the Guangdong branch had arrived. I smirked and smiled at him. "You don't need to look. I'm the only one here. I'm not looking for you for anything else. I just saw that the Yunnan branch's Taoist friends have been very successful recently, so I came to congratulate you in advance." Bai Chiwen was stunned. Then he asked, "May I know why you're congratulating me? You've stolen our Guangdong branch's spots. Logically speaking, after the Young Phoenix gathering, our Guangdong branch would definitely come looking for you and ask you for advice. But who would have thought that after you used such a shameless method to steal the spots to observe the true dragon vein, you actually injured our people? So, I've decided not to wait for the Young Phoenix gathering. I'll come looking for you now. You see, if I come looking for you after the gathering, I might take your life. But right now, we're still in the headquarters of the Metaphysics Association, so I can't kill you. At most, I can only beat you up. Isn't this a happy occasion?" Bai Chiwen's face darkened and a trace of ruthlessness flashed through his eyes. He sneered at me and said, "Taoist Zhou Yi, you're indeed someone who defeated the Qinling Han family's prodigy. You're really arrogant." After saying that, he leaned to the side and pointed at the door. "I wonder if Taoist Zhou Yi dares to come in and talk." I didn't hesitate and walked into the room. After I entered the room, Bai Chiwen, who was behind me, followed closely behind me and closed the door. Everyone in the room clearly heard what I said. A short and fat man with skin almost as dark as Bai Chiwen stood up and roared at me with a hoarse and unpleasant voice. "Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue? Now that you've entered this door, don't even think about leaving this place alive." The others also cheered and rushed over, surrounding me. I didn't say anything. Behind me, Bai Chiwen chuckled as he walked in front of me. "You geniuses are all the same. Your eyes are in the sky. I admit that you are definitely stronger than me, stronger than any of us here, but you actually look down on all of us. I really don't know if I should call you brave or stupid." His words stunned me. I didn't expect that after defeating Han Wennan, I would become a genius in other people's eyes. I shook my head. "Brave or stupid? You'll know once you try. Don't talk too much nonsense. I'm in a hurry. You guys come at me together." After saying that, I secretly mobilized the Tao energy in my body and prepared to attack. A dark aura flashed across Bai Chiwen's face. It was obvious that my words had hurt his self-esteem. Just as the others were gearing up to attack me, Bai Chiwen raised his hand to stop them and said to me, "I know you're strong, but I'm not King convinced." After saying that, he roared at the others, "I want to test his strength first. When you see that I can't beat him, you can come at me together." His words opened my eyes. This guy wasn't a hypocrite at all. He was shameless and straightforward. Although the others were also angry, Bai Chiwen's prestige was good. After hearing what he said, the others could only stop. Bai Chiwen gazed at me for a few seconds. Then he waved his hand. A wisp of Tao energy with a black aura attacked me. I knew that this guy didn't have any magic tools, but I didn't expect that he wouldn't even use a talisman and would directly use Tao energy to attack. These uncivilized barbarians really didn't care about rules. However, looking at the black Tao energy in his Tao energy, I guessed that it held back when he had injured Su Shuxing. Otherwise, the poison in Su Shuxing's body wouldn't have been so light. I didn't dare to be careless, so I quickly took out a burning sun talisman. After receiving the Tao energy, I threw it at his black Tao energy. Based on his Tao energy, even if I hadn't absorbed the dark green energy, I wouldn't have been afraid of him. However, directly using Tao energy to fight him would consume too much Tao energy. I guess that he wanted to consume my Tao energy, so I couldn't let him have his way. After the scorching sun talisman exploded in the air, it ignited a light green flame with a bang, completely blocking Bai Chiwen's poisonous chi of the way. Furthermore, with the terrifyingly high temperature, Bai Chiwen's chi of the way almost disappeared in an instant. As for the black, poisonous chi of the way, under the roasting of the light green flame, it turned into a drop of thick black liquid. Even in such a high temperature, it did not vaporize and instead dripped onto the ground. When the black liquid fell to the ground, it made a sizzling sound as if it was corroding the ground. It was obvious how poisonous it was. After the collision, Bai Chiwen's Tao energy couldn't block the burning sun talisman at all. The light green flame continued to rush toward Bai Chiwen. Bai Chiwen's expression changed. He extended his hand and finally took out a talisman. After receiving the Tao energy, a cold wind blew toward the light green flame. This was an gathering talisman, the simplest and most effective way to deal with the burning sun talisman. Unfortunately, when the chilly wind blew on the pale green flame, it only caused the flame to sway a little. Not to mention extinguishing the flame, it didn't even make the flame fade a little. This time, Bai Chiwen couldn't stay calm. He quickly took out a few more gathering talismans and called for the others to help him. The people around him were already prepared. When they heard his call, they quickly took out their gathering talismans and used them on the light green flame. Bai Chiwen, on the other hand, was quite impressive. He had used 3 gathering talismans in a row. In addition to the 5 talismans used by the people around him, a total of 8 gathering talismans were used before the pale green flame was finally extinguished. Even though my Tao Chi was much stronger than everyone else's, there were 9 gathering talismans in total. In addition to Bai Chiwen's Tao Chi that contained black Chi at the beginning, even with so much power, he was barely able to neutralize my fierce Yang talisman. I had to admit that the dark green power was too terrifying. The small room was in chaos. When the light green flame finally disappeared, the members of the Yunnan metaphysics branch heaved a sigh of relief. They looked at each other in dismay. In the end, their gazes landed on me. Everyone's faces were filled with bitterness. I smiled. "You've tested my strength. Now, can we do it together?" Bai Chiwen didn't say anything. It was obvious that he was struggling in his heart. But I have to admit that this despicable fellow still has some courage. Not long after, a ruthless look appeared on his face again, and he gritted his teeth and said, "Although the power of that talisman is strong, he must have consumed a lot of Tao Chi. There are 10 of us. How can we be scared by him alone?" He looked at the people around him and took out a strange black talisman. He walked towards me and spat out 3 words, "Let's attack together." The others were also provoked. They took out all kinds of talismans and screamed as they pounced on me. After experiencing the terrifying power of the dark green energy, I was confident. I didn't need to use talismans anymore. I used the Tao energy in my body and gently pushed it toward the 10 people who were rushing toward me. With a faint green aura of the way, it formed a complete pillar of light in the air, blocking all of the talismans that the 10 of them had thrown out. The flames and chilly winds that the talismans had released were useless in front of this thick light pillar. It didn't take long before they were all scattered. Only Bai Chiwen's strange black talisman emitted a thick black mist that enveloped a small part of my Tao energy. But very quickly, a light green color appeared in the thick black fog. Then my Taoist Qi suddenly expanded, directly dispersing the black fog. Chapter 125. After sending the 10 people of the Yunnan Metaphysics Association flying, there was still a lot of my Tao energy left. After circling in the air, it returned to my body and enveloped me before slowly entering my body. At this moment, Bai Chiwen and the others didn't have a bitter expression on their faces. They were filled with shock and bewilderment. Bai Chiwen, in particular, was coughing blood as he muttered, "How is this possible? Even Han Wen and Zhang Kunlun shouldn't be this strong." Why? To be honest, not only was he shocked, but I was also shocked. This strange dark green power seemed to have a natural restraining effect on other people's Tao energy. It surprised me again and again. I couldn't believe it. After calming myself down, I looked at the people of the Yunnan branch who were paralyzed on the ground. I shook my head and didn't say anything before I stood up and left. It was almost time for them to observe the true dragon's vein. I didn't hold back this time. My injuries were enough to affect their absorption of the dragon's vein qi. It was the price they had to pay for their actions. Of course, I didn't push things too far. After all, there were still a few days left for them. Whether or not they could recover from their injuries would depend on their luck. The commotion in the room wasn't small, but it was nothing compared to the noise they made when they gathered together. Moreover, Bai Chiwen had already closed the door, so the noise couldn't be transmitted outside. Thus, it didn't attract the attention of the Metaphysics Association. I left the room, and on the way back to my room, I bumped into Zhang Wenfei and the others. Besides Su Shuxing, the other 8 people of the Guangdong branch were rushing towards me. When we bumped into each other, we were surprised. I asked in astonishment, "What are you doing?" Zhang Wenfei was stunned, but he didn't stop. Instead, he hurriedly ran to my side and looked at my body. Then, he asked, "You're not injured?" "Why would I be injured? You didn't come back for a long time. I went out to look for you, but I couldn't find you. I thought you went to the Yunnan branch to find those bastards." Zhang Wenfei wiped his sweat. Perhaps it was because his injuries hadn't healed yet, but he couldn't help but cough a few times. Then, he rejoiced and said, "It seems that you didn't go. That's good, that's good." I smiled at him and said embarrassedly, "Actually, I just came back from the Yunnan branch." The group of people had just heaved a sigh of relief, but when they heard what I said, they opened their eyes wide. "Then why did you—" Before Zhang Wenfei could finish, I interrupted him with a chuckle. "I already told you that those people weren't my opponents. They were just a bunch of clowns. Apart from using poison and other crooked methods, the rest were not worth mentioning. If they were really that capable, they wouldn't be ranked in Zone Gay." The group of people looked at each other. Finally, they became excited and shouted, "Zhou, he took care of them all by himself. Let's see if those bastards dare to jump around again in the future." Zhang Wenfei finally heaved a sigh of relief. However, unlike the excitement of the others, his face was still filled with worry. We stood on the spot and chatted for a while. Since it was getting late, we were worried that the people from the metaphysics headquarters would come, so we quickly returned to District D. After we returned to our respective rooms, Zhang Wenfei asked me worriedly, "Zhou Yi, are the injuries of the people from the Yunnan branch serious?" I nodded and said I didn't hold back. Their injuries are at least more serious than Su Shuxing's. They should be similar to your injuries. Zhang Wenfei's eyes widened, and he said anxiously, "Why don't you know the severity of the situation? Their injuries will definitely affect their ability to observe the true dragon vein. Aren't you afraid that they'll give up and report you to the headquarters?" Ever since the dark green energy had separated my body into 5 light pillars, I no longer felt that observing the true dragon's veins was dispensable. I really needed this chance now. However, I didn't care about what Zhang Wenfei said. I smiled and said, "Of course I'm afraid, but I need this opportunity. They also need it more than me. Moreover, there's still a few days left. People tend to have a fluke mentality. As long as there's hope, they'll hope that their injuries will be healed within these few days. They won't fight to the death with me." Moreover, the corner of my mouth curled into a cold smile. Would they still dare to seek their own deaths after witnessing my power? If something like that really happens, I don't mind giving them the most profound lesson. After hearing what I said, Zhang Wenfei was silent for a while. In the end, he nodded and didn't say anything. However, the worry on his face hadn't completely faded. After talking about this matter, I laid on my bed and went to sleep. In the past few days, I had been in a series of fierce battles. In addition, I had been studying the green energy at night. Although my body and spirit were much stronger than ordinary people, I still felt tired. I decided to have a good rest today. The next morning, not long after I woke up, someone knocked on my door. I thought it was Su Shuxing and the others who had come to ask about yesterday's matter, so I didn't pay much attention to it and went to open the door. In the end, standing outside the door was Director Song Xing, whom I had seen earlier. When I saw him, I couldn't help but frown. Why did he come to find me? Could it be that the people from Yunnan branch had really chosen to fight to the death? At this time, Zhang Wenfei also saw Director Song Xing. His expression instantly changed, and he stood there, not knowing what to do. We didn't say anything, but Director Song Xing walked in with interest. After looking around, he asked, "Have you been living well these past few days?" I didn't know what he meant, so I nodded and said, "Of course. The environment here is quiet and the air is good. It's very comfortable to live here." Director Song Xing nodded and sat down on a chair by the table. Then, he threw an ancient folding fan towards me. I caught it and was immediately stunned. The color of the folding fan was ancient, but there was a dark yellow light flowing on the fan's ribs. Moreover, it contained a faint Tao energy. I could tell at a glance that it was a magic tool. Why did he throw such a magic tool to me? As if he had seen through my doubts, Director Song Xing said with a smile, "Do you still remember the geomancy diagram of the Yin house that transformed from a turtle and a snake during the dragon seizing tournament?" Of course I remember. As I nodded, I became even more doubtful. What did this have to do with the geomancy diagram of the Yin house? Director Song Xing chuckled and continued. "At that time, someone should have told you that it was a question that our Metaphysics Society's old president Li had specially set up. He didn't expect anyone to be able to answer it, but he didn't think that you would be able to answer it. Moreover, you're from old President Li's hometown branch. After knowing about this, the old president felt that you were fated, so he specially asked me to give you this folding fan magic tool that he had used in his early years." After saying that, he pointed at the folding fan in my hand and said, "This fan is called the Square Heavenly Fan. It's a defensive magic tool. After careful nurturing, it will have a great defensive power. Moreover, according to the old president, this fan has other mystical abilities that you will have to explore on your own." After hearing what he said, I immediately heaved a sigh of relief, and at the same time, my heart was filled with joy. I didn't think that I would have such a fortuitous encounter after becoming the champion of the Dragon Seizing Tournament. Defensive magic tools were actually quite rare. When two magic tools of the same grade were compared, the offensive magic tool would definitely not be able to break the defensive magic tool. This was common sense. In addition, the number of defensive magic tools was quite small, so it was even more precious. During the battle with Han Wen, when he didn't take out the Celestial Master Magic tool, he had blocked the yin-yang fish that I had drawn out with the Yama pen for the first time. Apart from using hand seals, when the yin-yang fish exploded, he must have used some kind of defensive magic tool to remain unscathed under my all-out attack. It's just that I didn't see it in the blink of an eye. Moreover, the defensive magic tool was a life-saving means. At that time, I didn't see it clearly. It must have been done deliberately by Han Wen. Naturally, The fewer people who knew about the life-saving means, the better. Holding this ancient and simple square heavenly fan, the more I looked at it, the happier I felt. At that moment, director Song Xing spoke again. This time, he wasn't talking to me, but to Zhang Wenfei. Little friend, can you go out for a while? I still have some things that I need to talk to Zhou Yi alone. Zhang Wenfei and I were stunned. We had just turned from worry to joy, but now we couldn't help but worry. What is it that he wants to talk to me alone? Chapter 126. Zhang Wenfei frowned as he looked at director Song Xing. After staying silent for a while, he helplessly walked out of the room. Although I was a little worried, I didn't show it on my face. After Zhang Wenfei left, I sat down on the bed and asked with a smile, Director Song, what's the matter? Just say it. Director Song Xing smiled and looked at me. The second matter is also a happy one. It's about the Dragon Vein ranking. His words were completely out of my expectations. Could it be that there were some changes to the ranking? Looking at his smiling face, I was happy and quickly asked, is it to restore our Guangdong branch's ranking? Director Song Xing was stunned and quickly shook his head. The ranking has already been decided. How can it be restored? I know that the other branches didn't do what they did during the ranking competition, but they didn't break the rules, so we can't interfere. However, after some research, your Guangdong branch suffered huge loss, so we thought of a way to compensate you. I knew that it was impossible to restore our ranking, but I was also interested in the compensation, so I quickly asked him what it was. Director Song Xing looked at me, and the smile on his face faded. What the headquarters means is that we can arrange for you to follow the people from the other branches to observe the true dragon veins tomorrow or the day after. Tomorrow or the day after. That's great. It's a lot higher than our previous ranking. But after he said that, he stopped talking. I asked him curiously, what about the others? Come with me? Director Song Xing shook his head. It's still acceptable to arrange for you to join, but if we arrange for the other branches will definitely be unhappy. So, the others will go according to the original order. Only you can go in advance. His words stunned me for a long time. Then I smiled wryly. He said that it was compensation for our Guangdong branch, but in reality, how was that compensation? It was obviously because I had the talent to fight against Han Wan'an, so he specially arranged for me. Just like how Bai Chiwen called me a genius yesterday, I was probably a rare genius in the eyes of the Metaphysics Society. I had the potential to be nurtured, which was why director Song Xing specifically came to tell me about it. If I hadn't displayed this potential, I'm afraid no one would have come to me to talk about compensation. To tell the truth, I want to go because the 5 pillars of Tao Qi in my body are divided, and my level is far from being able to draw Qi like a pillar. I need a large amount of Dragon Vein Qi to make up for what I need. If this drags on until the last day, who knows how much Dragon Vein Qi is left in the true Dragon Vein for me to absorb. At that time, it will definitely have a great impact on me. However, could I accept it with a clear conscience? How would I face Zhang Wenfei then? How could he face the injured Su Shuxing? And those who, because of my wrong decisions, caused them to fall from the 8th place to the last in the metaphysics branch? But on second thought, such an excellent opportunity was right in front of me. If I didn't cherish it, wouldn't I be letting myself down? The expression on my face showed that I was struggling. After being silent for a long time, I finally sighed. With a calm expression, I said to Director Song Xing, Director Song, I know that the headquarters has good intentions, but I am responsible for the fact that our Guangdong branch's ranking has fallen to the last place. I really can't abandon them and go and observe the true dragon's veins in advance. I still hope that the headquarters can do some research and raise the overall ranking of our branch. The smile on Director Song Xing's face finally disappeared, and he asked me with uncertainty, do you want to think about it? This time, I didn't hesitate at all and replied resolutely, I've already thought about it, unless the people from the Guangdong branch can go with me. Director Song Xing stood up from his chair and said regretfully, you have great talent, but you have a lowly background. At this age, Your strength isn't inferior to the direct descendant of the Qinling Han family. You will definitely have great achievements in the future. I've also seen your companions. To be honest, their talents are far inferior to yours. From the looks of it now, you're loyal, advancing, and retreating with them. But in the long run, you're only delaying yourself. You should think about it this way. In the future, when your strength reaches Sure Yao, or even the heavenly Sure realm, then you can help repay them. They're lost now, compared to the benefits they will receive in the future, which is more important. I couldn't help but admit that the example he gave was very reasonable, but I received a good family education since I was young, and after I grew up, I also received the influence of higher education. I deeply understood that value couldn't be compared like that. I shook my head at Director Song Xing. According to what you said, they might receive more benefits, but that's something that hasn't happened yet. So anything is possible, right? Seeing my determined expression, Director Song Xing finally sighed and turned to leave. However, before he left, he told me that if I changed my mind, I could find him anytime in the next few days. He could also arrange a place for me in one of the higher rank branches. After he left, Zhang Wenfei immediately ran back and asked me anxiously, "What's going on?" I knew that if I told him, the people in the branch would advise me to think for myself. So I didn't say anything. I just smiled and told him it's about Han Wenan and it's not convenient to tell outsiders. When Zhang Wenfei heard that it wasn't about the Yunnan branch, he heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't care about it anymore. Instead, he curiously looked at the square sky fan in my hand and showed it to him. I also put the previous matter behind me and started to study the defensive magic tool with him. The square sky fan wasn't big. Even when it was opened, it was only slightly bigger than 2 palms. Moreover, it didn't look eye-catching. The light flowing on it was dark yellow, the same color as the fan itself. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to notice it. The design on the fan was even more unsightly. There was only a crooked little mound drawn on the fan, and a few twisted weeds were faintly outlined on the side. It looked like a desolate and lonely grave. On the back of the fan, there was a couplet. Rumbling sounds are faintly found, and the twists and turns are reborn. After looking at it for a long time, I couldn't see anything strange about the picture and the words. Zhang Wenfei was a little impatient. Hurry and taking the Dao Qi to see the power of this magic tool. I didn't try to avoid it. I directly guided the magic tool in my body to the center of the fan. Then, the earth yellow fan flashed and disappeared. Then, a lonely grave appeared in front of me, along with the twisted weeds around it. I was startled. Generally speaking, magic tools couldn't transform. For example, Han Wenan and Yang Shilong's magic tools, which could change their appearance, were already extraordinary. Han Wenan's leaf was a heavenly master's magic tool. However, this extremely mediocre-looking square sky fan was actually able to transform into a lone grave out of nowhere. It was unbelievable. The two of us stared at each other in confusion for a long time. Finally, Zhang Wenfei reacted first and said, "I've heard from Master that there is a special kind of magic tool that can absorb a real world into the magic tool and act as the spirit of the magic tool. Could this square sky fan be that kind of magic tool?" I had never heard of such a thing before. Zhang Wenfei, please explain it to me. However, he had only heard his master mention it once. He didn't know much, so he couldn't explain it. After discussing for a while, I stopped studying the magic tool's properties and started to study its power. The results surprised me. This thing was just as Zhang Wenfei had said. It could take in a real world and use it as a magic tool. The lonely grave looked strange, but Zhang Wenfei didn't use his Dao Qi at all. He just walked from the middle of the grave to me. What kind of defense is this? It's the same as not having it, right? After that, no matter how I urged my Dao Qi, the result didn't change. The small soil mound still looked lifeless. In the end, Zhang Wenfei comforted me. This magic tool has a spirit. It needs to be carefully nurtured to fully display its defensive power. I had no choice but to believe him. I put the square sky fan away and used my Dao Qi to slowly nurture it. I would see if there were any changes in the future. After that, I spent the next few days slowly absorbing the power of the dark green bead to nourish the square sky fan. As for the Yunnan branch, it was just as I had predicted. In the end, they didn't choose to fight to the death. Instead, they obediently went to study the true dragon's vein. After that, I didn't see them again. Chapter 127. Although we were resentful that we were ranked last, when the day came, the 10 members of the branch had already forgotten about the previous discord. Instead, they were filled with anxiety and longing for the day. None of us could sleep the night before. Everyone knew that this trip was related to whether or not they could advance from the dragon drawing realm to the pressure point realm. The difference between these two realms was a watershed. A feng shui master who had undergone the baptism of dragon energy would have a great improvement in their physique. They could even prolong their lifespan. This was a great attraction to anyone. If they didn't successfully convert enough dragon energy this time and couldn't reach the pressure point realm, they would never have another chance in their lives. The Metaphysics Society wouldn't allow a feng shui master to observe the true dragon's vein a second time. Finding a true dragon's vein was even more wishful thinking. According to the previous results, the Guangdong branch had always been at the forefront of the other branches. On average, 7 or 8 people could smoothly reach the chi drawing pillar level and enter the pressure point realm. It was just that this time, they were ranked last, and no one dared to have 100% confidence. Even I didn't know what the final result would be. After all, I had 5 pillars of energy, and only one of them had reached the chi drawing pillar level. If I wanted to make up for the other 4, it would be difficult to be the first to observe the true dragon's vein, not to mention being ranked last. However, worrying about it wouldn't help. When we set off the next day, I had already calmed down. In any case, I could only do my best and leave it to fate. I could only take one step at a time. After all, the energy I had absorbed from the Mount Tai stone had helped me reach the chi drawing pillar level. Even if I couldn't do it this time, there might be other opportunities in the future. Since we were the last to set off, Director Song Xing and the others from the Metaphysics Society also went with us. After asking, I learned that they would wait for us to observe the true dragon's vein and then return to the Metaphysics Society with us. The true dragon's vein was near our manor. After driving for half an hour, they dropped us off. When we got out of the car, full of hope, we didn't see the true dragon's vein. We only saw a lush forest. At this moment, Director Song Xing got out of the car. He looked at the forest in front of us and told us, this is just the periphery of the true dragon's vein. Around 10 kilometers away from here is the true dragon's vein. There are no more roads for vehicles in front, so you can only walk on your own from now on. Thinking about it, it made sense. Since the true dragon vein was so hidden, it definitely would not have built a path there. Moreover, I know that although true dragon veins are hard to find and feng shui masters have almost no chance to find them, they can only rely on the true dragon veins found by their predecessors to increase their realms. However, the process of finding true dragon veins is also a form of cultivation. It is very useful for learning feng shui knowledge and increasing one's cultivation realm. Furthermore, the true dragon vein wasn't the only place that contained the dragon vein chi. It included the ancestral dragon, the embryonic breath dragon vein, and the dragon veins that extended out. Only by studying the entire true dragon vein and gaining a complete understanding of the true dragon vein would they be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort when studying the true dragon vein. Their efficiency in absorbing the dragon vein chi would be at least 50% higher than others. The Metaphysics Society's arrangement definitely had this layer of meaning. However, Director Song Xing didn't say much to us and just brought us along a muddy road into the forest. As soon as we stepped on the road, I started to look around and quickly found the location of the dragon vein. Moreover, the dragon vein was far behind us. Following the direction of the dragon vein, we easily found the embryonic breath dragon vein not far from us. After finding the embryonic breath dragon vein, I was reassured. As long as we followed the embryonic breath dragon vein, the traces of the true dragon vein wouldn't disappear. I didn't continue to look behind us, but turned to look at my companions from the Guangdong branch. Zhang Wenfei and Su Shuxing were the same as me. Their gazes were on the dragon vein in the distance, but they hadn't found the location of the embryonic breath dragon vein yet, so they were studying it as they walked. Among the others, only 3 of them were looking around. As for the rest, they were focused on hurrying on their journey and didn't seem to have any awareness in this aspect. I hastily explained to everyone the significance of observing the entire dragon's vein. When the others heard that absorbing the dragon's vein could actually increase the efficiency by 50%, they paid more attention to it. They carefully observed the dragon's vein and embryonic breath dragon's vein, according to what I told them. During the process of searching for the dragon vein, although it was best to find it yourself, the dragon vein and the embryonic breath dragon vein were still at the initial stage. Even if someone reminded them, the effect wouldn't be too different. After I finished speaking, Zhang Wenfei quickly echoed, "I also just found a trace of the aura of the embryonic breath dragon vein and confirmed the direction of the entire dragon vein." I was about to remind everyone, but I didn't expect you to find it faster than me, Zhou Yi. After he said that, Director Song Xing, who was leading us forward, also said emotionally, "Yeah, I brought many people through this path over the years, but there are only a few people who have found the embryonic breath dragon vein so quickly. Moreover, Zhou Yi has already reminded us, so he must have found it earlier. I've never seen such speed in my life." His praise made me feel a little embarrassed. It wasn't that I was fast in finding it, but that I had already seen the embryonic breath dragon vein outside the Fire God Temple. At that time, I had spent a few days to confirm the location of the embryonic breath dragon vein. Now, with my previous experience, I was naturally able to find some clues immediately. As for the others, they might only have this chance to see the embryonic breath dragon vein once in their lives, so their speed naturally couldn't be compared to mine. At that moment, Director Song Xing said, "I originally thought that since your Guangdong branch was ranked last, the number of people who could participate in the Young Phoenix gathering would definitely be greatly affected. But now, it seems that everything is hard to say. I've seen the statistics from the headquarters this year. About less than half of the people from the other branches can start to observe the first third of the road. Beyond this range, the embryonic breath dragon vein won't be able to be seen. Even if the people from the metaphysics headquarters remind you at that time, if you miss the first opportunity, you won't be able to compare to the others. We, feng shui masters, pay attention to opportunities. This road is also a test of the metaphysics society. You can only rely on yourself to comprehend it." After he said that, the other members of the branch looked at me with gratitude in their eyes. Although Director Song Xing didn't say it explicitly, it was obvious that he was praising me for sharing this information with others, so the others naturally understood. For the rest of the journey, no one spoke. Everyone focused their attention on studying the entire true dragon vein. Back then at the Fire God Temple, I discovered the ancestral dragon after the embryonic breath dragon vein, and then entered the range of the Fire God Temple. In reality, the embryonic breath dragon vein and the ancestral dragon were not the only things that the true dragon vein extended from. According to the death scripture, the terrains that extended from the true dragon vein were ancestral dragon embryonic breath, branch vein chi, opening the tent and entering the head, and bright dragon robe. There were a total of 4 major terrains and 8 minor ones. The embryonic breath dragon vein and the ancestral dragon were only the first major landforms. Afterward, I walked from the branch to the pulse, from the tent to the entrance. After walking for 10 kilometers, I finally found Ming Tang. The term Bright Hall originally referred to the court where hundreds of officials paid homage to the monarch when he was listening to politics in ancient times. Later, it was extended to feng shui. The entrance of the house of the living or the place in front of the tomb of the dead were all called Bright Hall. Correspondingly, the world outside the true dragon vein was also known as the Bright Hall. There is a saying in feng shui, enter the mountain to find the entrance of the water, climb the cave to see the Bright Hall. Not only could one find the tomb through the Bright Hall when visiting the tomb of the dead, but one could also find the location of the true dragon vein through the bright hall when searching for the true dragon vein. After passing through the bright hall, a small hill appeared in front of us. After the bright hall, it was naturally the dragon robe. What was the dragon robe? The land that covered the true dragon vein was called the dragon robe. In other words, the true dragon vein was inside the small hill. Seeing the hill, Zhang Wenfei subconsciously blurted out, "This is the dragon robe? Why is it so short?" Director Song Xing looked at the small hill in front of him, his eyes filled with endless infatuation and deep thought. There was even a trace of melancholy. After letting out a breath, he said, "Don't say that there is a dragon in the high mountains, but it is lost on the flat ground. This is the dragon robe. Everyone, follow me into the cave." After saying that, he pointed at the cave on the mountain wall in front of him and took the lead to walk inside. Chapter 128. Don't say that there's a dragon in the high mountains, but it's lost on the flat ground. These two lines were from the Tang Dynasty's feng shui master, Yang Yunsong's shocking dragon scripture. It meant that a true dragon didn't necessarily live in the high mountains. It could appear on the flat ground. Originally, it was meant to explain the feng shui of the plain. However, it was suitable for this small hill in front of us. After director Song Xing entered the cave, we hurried to follow him into the cave. At first, I thought that the Metaphysics Society would send a lot of people to guard the true dragon's vein. However, no one came out of the cave. It was strange. From a moment we had arrived until now, only director Song Xing had been leading the team. The true dragon's vein, which was very important to the Metaphysics Society, didn't look like anyone was guarding it. Was it because they were worried that people would suspect something? That's why they had set up such a strict guard method? I thought about it. I didn't think it was like that. After all, there was a big manor not far from here. Even if they wanted to hide it, they wouldn't be able to do so. Most likely, there were some hidden mechanisms nearby that I couldn't see. The people in charge of guarding the true dragon's vein should be hiding in those places. At first, there was nothing strange about the cave. It was dark and narrow. After we entered the cave, director Song Xing held 2 torches in his hands. He gave one to me and led the way. I held the torch and followed director Song Xing. At the same time, I carefully observed the mountain walls around us. Although I could feel the thick aura of the dragon's vein, the mountain walls around us were bare. I didn't see anything strange. After walking for almost half an hour, the mountain walls twisted and turned. Under the interference of the thick aura of the dragon's vein, I had lost my sense of direction. However, right at this moment, a light moved in front of us. Even under the light of the torches, it still shone brightly in front of us. Director Song Xing suddenly stopped in his tracks. "We've arrived?" The crowd, who had been silent all along the way, suddenly raised their heads and looked at director Song Xing, who was walking at the front with burning eyes. Everyone's heart was beating like a drum. I opened my mouth and wanted to ask, but I couldn't make a sound. All of a sudden, director Song Xing threw the torch in his hand to the ground. He gently stepped on the torch to extinguish it. Then he turned to me and asked me to extinguish the torch as well. After I extinguished the torch, the surroundings didn't turn dark. Instead, there was a faint layer of light. This kind of light was like fluorescent light. It could barely illuminate the path ahead. However, when I lifted my head to look ahead, I saw a stone wall that looked like a full moon. Director Song Xing didn't say anything. He just led us to walk in that direction. As we got closer, the brilliance of the stone wall became even brighter, illuminating our surroundings. When we were only a few meters away from the stone wall, I discovered that there was a small crack in the rock beside the stone wall. The light on the stone wall did not come from the stone wall itself. Instead, it came from the crack in the rock. Moreover, every once in a while, an unusually bright brilliance would burst out from that crack, and then slowly dim. Earlier, when we were holding the torches, the bright light came from here. After taking a few more steps forward, director Song Xing walked to the crack and stopped. He turned to me and said, "Zhou Yi, take them in from here. Inside is the true dragon vein. You have a whole day. At midnight, I will call you out here." I was stunned. Director Song Xing, you're not going in? Song Xing looked at me with envy in his eyes. After a few seconds of silence, he shook his head and smiled wryly. The people of the Metaphysics Society only have one chance to enter. I can't go in. I can only stay here to protect you. The true dragon vein's biggest function was to replenish one's Tao energy. In fact, even after reaching the acupuncture point realm, the true dragon vein was still very useful to feng shui masters. Even feng shui masters at the Heaven Master realm desired the true dragon vein. That was why Song Xing looked envious. However, the entire Metaphysics Society relied on the true dragon vein. After all these years, the true dragon vein's burden must have been very heavy. Otherwise, the Metaphysics Society wouldn't only open it once every 3 years. It was probably because of this reason that the Metaphysics Society strictly restricted others from absorbing the dragon vein's qi. Only feng shui masters at the dragon-seeking realm were allowed to use it. I nodded at Song Xing. Then, I turned to look at the others. I took a deep breath and said, "Follow me. Let's go in." Then I took the lead and stepped into the crack in the rock. As soon as I entered, a bright light shone at me. I couldn't help but squint my eyes. After the light disappeared, I saw that the situation in front of me was completely different from the cave outside. It was an extremely spacious mountain belly. It looked like a huge mountain that had been hollowed out. From the small hill outside, I couldn't tell that there was such a world inside. And in the middle of this huge mountain, there was a dragon lying on the ground. That's right, it was a dragon. Its entire body emitted a bright white light that was much brighter than the moonlight of a full moon. Every once in a while, the 2 huge eyes on the dragon's head would open and close. The light that shone on our bodies outside the crack was the light of the dragon's eyes. Seeing this scene, everyone who came in was stunned on the spot, almost unable to believe their eyes. After a long while, I woke up from my absent-mindedness and walked towards the crouching giant dragon. When I got closer, I could see that it wasn't a living dragon. It was more like a huge stone dragon sculpture. However, the stone dragon sculpture was covered with a thick layer of white light. I couldn't see what the dragon's body was. I could only feel that it was made of stone. As for the thick layer of light outside, it was the endless dragon vein energy. Dragon vein energy was colorless and formless, just like air. However, the dragon vein energy here actually formed such a bright white light. It showed how thick it was. Moreover, this was the true dragon vein that had already been absorbed by dozens of people from the metaphysics branch. It was hard to imagine what the true dragon formed by the pure dragon vein qi looked like when Han Wen and the others first came in. As expected of the true dragon vein, the most mysterious place was the dragon's mouth at the front of the dragon's vein. There was a small ball of milky white liquid floating in the air. It was at least 10 meters away from us, but we didn't know what it was. At this moment, I had calmed down. I wasn't mesmerized by the true dragon vein in front of me anymore. I called for the others and arranged for them to sit down. I told them to quickly absorb the dragon vein energy. We only had 1 day, or rather, half a day. It was already noon and the night was about to end. Everyone's dreams, whether they would come true or wither, would be decided by this half a day. No one dared to waste time. After sitting down around the true dragon vein, everyone held their breaths and started to absorb the dragon vein energy. I did the same. After sitting down below the dragon's neck, I slowly adjusted my breathing. After my breathing stabilized, I started to move the Tao Qi in my body to gather at the first pillar of Tao Qi. Then I started to absorb the extremely thick dragon vein energy around me. The extremely pure dragon vein energy was quickly absorbed into my body. In an instant, it was turned into extremely thick Tao Qi. No wonder Han Wen and the others still wanted to come here, even though their Qi of the way had already reached the Qi gathering pillar realm. The pure Qi of the dragon vein here was definitely much richer and purer than the Qi of the way that I had converted from the Qi of the dragon vein on the stone of Mount Tai. Needless to say, its power was definitely much greater. They probably wanted to turn the Tao Qi in their bodies into the purest power. As I absorbed, my body and mind completely calmed down. I was immersed in an extremely mysterious realm. The Tao Qi in my body was rapidly increasing. However, at this moment, the jade bracelet that was hanging on my chest suddenly broke free from my clothes. After it slowly floated into the air, it suddenly charged towards the true dragon vein like a wild horse. Its strength was so great that it even broke the rope that was hanging on my neck. Instantly, I woke up from that mysterious state. I looked at the jade bracelet in shock as it charged towards the true dragon vein. Then, it stuck to it and didn't move. At the same time, the thick dragon vein energy on the true dragon vein crazily surged towards the jade bracelet. The jade bracelet was actually absorbing the dragon vein energy. Instantly, I thought back to when I was at the Shenzhen Metaphysics Association. When I faced the Mount Tai stone, the jade bracelet also crazily absorbed all the dragon vein energy on it. Looking at its crazed expression, could it be that this time it wanted to absorb all the dragon vein energy from the true dragon vein? Chapter 129. With the experience from the Mount Tai stone, I had thought that the jade bracelet could absorb the energy of the dragon vein. However, before I saw it, I didn't believe that the jade bracelet could absorb the entire true dragon vein. It was a true dragon vein. What was the jade bracelet? The jade bracelet was just a toy that Red Shadow had used to possess. Compared to the true dragon vein, it was just like an ant. It was like an ant trying to swallow an elephant. I sat there and watched the aura of the true dragon vein become weaker and weaker while the dragon energy of the jade bracelet became stronger. I became more and more anxious. The entire Metaphysics Association only has one true dragon vein. This is different from the stone of Mount Tai. The dragon Qi on the stone of Mount Tai can only be used by me to raise my cultivation, but the true dragon vein can be used by the entire Metaphysics Association. It was the foundation of the Metaphysics Society for 100 years. If the jade bracelet absorbed the entire true dragon vein, wouldn't the Metaphysics Society go crazy? With my current power, I guess there wouldn't be anything left of me if I faced the crazed members of the Metaphysics Society. Although I was greedy, I didn't dare to be greedy. I didn't care about anything else and hurried to pull the jade bracelet down. After absorbing so much dragon vein energy, my strength wasn't small. However, the jade bracelet was the same as when it was attached to the Mount Tai stone. No matter how hard I pulled, the jade bracelet didn't budge. It was as if it had been welded to the stone. What should I do? I was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. I stood up and spun around on the spot. I used my hands to pull, my feet to kick, and my teeth to bite. However, it didn't work. The only good thing was that the other members of the branch were sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed. They were completely immersed in absorbing the energy of the dragon vein. No one noticed my situation. I took a deep breath to calm myself down. Then, I started to think of a solution. The jade bracelet was Red Shadow's possession. Now Tong Tong was inside it. If that was the case, could Tong Tong control it? My eyes brightened. I hurried to call Tong Tong in my mind. However, no matter how hard I called, Tong Tong didn't respond. He had completely lost contact with me. After all, with the Mount Tai stone as a precedent, I wasn't worried about Tong Tong. The surging dragon energy had cut off his connection with the outside world. However, I couldn't contact Tong Tong. What else could I do to stop this crazy jade bracelet? I dejectedly sat on the ground. At this moment, the dragon energy in the jade bracelet had already reached a terrifying level. As for the true dragon vein, there was only a thin layer of dragon energy left. At least half of the dragon energy had been absorbed by the jade bracelet. Even if she could contact Tong Tong now, it would be too late. As long as the people from the Metaphysics Association weren't stupid, they would be able to tell that there was a problem with the true dragon vein. I didn't think about how to stop the jade bracelet. Instead, I started to think about how to fix it. However, my mind was in a mess. I couldn't think about how to stop Tong Tong bracelet. At this moment, the last trace of dragon Qi on the true dragon vein was finally absorbed by Yuan. The true dragon vein was still wrapped in a layer of dim fluorescent light. However, It was no longer the fluorescent light of the true dragon vein itself, but the light of the jade bracelet. Hua, Tong Tong had the dragon from the bracelet. Light bracelet, after absorbed the light, and the jade light, the dragon, the jade had absorbed the statue. Moreover, since the jade bracelet was still attached to the statue, its light also covered the entire statue. However, the dragon head where the jade bracelet was glowing brightly, while the dragon tail was far away. It was so dim that only the statue was left. The surging dragon energy from the jade bracelet was still diffusing. Zhang Wenfei and the others were still immersed in that mysterious atmosphere. They hadn't woken up yet. As it had come to this, I had no choice but to take one step at a time. As the jade bracelet had absorbed all the dragon energy, it could be taken off the statue. However, I didn't dare to do so. Once the jade bracelet was taken off, Zhang Wenfei and the others would wake up. At that time, I wouldn't be able to explain anything to them. During this period of time, although I got along well with the 9 of them, the implications of this matter were too great. I didn't dare to place my safety entirely on their kindness. I closed my eyes again and tried to absorb the dragon chi from the jade bracelet. Immediately, I found the same feeling as before. The surging and pure dragon chi crazily surged towards me. Almost in an instant, a large amount of dragon chi turned into Dao chi, filling up half of the second Dao chi light pillar in my body. This speed was at least 10 times faster than when I absorbed the dragon chi from the true dragon vein. However, since the entire true dragon tie was in the jade bracelet, I wasn't in a hurry to absorb it. After trying for a while, I stopped and stood up to check on Zhang Wenfei and the others. At this time, Zhang Wenfei's Dao energy wasn't far from the Qi guiding pillar. As for the others, except for Su Shuxing, who could barely reach the halfway mark, the others were only a little bit stronger than the Qi guiding finger. I roughly calculated the time. We had already been here for 4 to 5 hours. According to their speed, only Zhang Wenfei and Su Shuxing would be able to reach the Qi guiding pillar by the time it was midnight. The others wouldn't be able to succeed. After thinking about it, I walked towards a branch member named He Bo, who was relatively close to me. After walking to his side, I sat down cross-legged and placed my hand on his body. Don't open your eyes. Focus and calm your mind. He Bo's body shivered. It was obvious that he had heard my voice. However, he quickly followed my instructions and calmed down, continuing to absorb the dragon energy. Seeing that he was ready, I slowly started to move the dragon energy in the jade bracelet towards He Bo's body. Through the jade bracelet, the speed at which I absorbed the dragon energy was at least 10 times faster than when I had absorbed it from the true dragon tie. Compared to He Bo's speed, it was like heaven and earth. He Bo's body shivered again. His face showed a hint of happiness, but he tried his best to suppress it. Very quickly, he calmed down and greedily absorbed the dragon energy. In just half an hour, the dragon energy in He Bo's body had accumulated enough for him to reach the Qi guiding pillar level. Only then did I release my hand and stand up. He Bo still didn't move. The dragon energy in his body couldn't be stored for a long time. Next, he had to quickly convert the dragon energy into Dao energy. Immediately after, I went to the second person to help him absorb the dragon energy. After 4 hours, I had helped the others absorb enough dragon energy. Only Zhang Wenfei and Su Shuxing were left. At this time, Zhang Wenfei had already absorbed enough dragon energy with his own power. He didn't need my help at all. Su Shuxing, on the other hand, had encountered some difficulties. He was still quite a distance away from reaching the Qi guiding pillar level. I walked to his side and repeated the same process. After I had helped him absorb enough dragon energy, I stopped and returned to my original position to sit down. After waiting for another 5 minutes, He Bo, who had accepted my help first, opened his eyes almost at the same time as Zhang Wenfei. Both of their faces were filled with joy as they jumped up from the ground. After looking at each other, He Bo turned to look at me and said, "Zhou Yi, no words can express my gratitude for your kindness. If you have any problems in the future, just look for me. I will definitely help you if I can." Zhang Wenfei, who hadn't seen the previous scene, obviously didn't know what had happened. He looked at He Bo in astonishment. After He Bo explained to him, he laughed and asked me how the others were doing. After knowing that I had helped everyone absorb the dragon energy, Zhang Wenfei heaved a sigh of relief. Even though he didn't say anything, I knew that he had been feeling guilty because of the true dragon vein's ranking. He felt that he had delayed the others' future. It was only now that he felt relieved. At this moment, the others woke up. Just as we were about to walk over to ask about the situation, He Bo saw the situation of the true dragon vein. His expression instantly changed, and he asked, "What happened to the true dragon vein? How did it become like this?" After he said that, Zhang Wenfei and the rest also looked at the true dragon vein. Their faces were filled with astonishment. Of course, I couldn't tell them, so I just stood at the side and didn't say a word. As they discussed, they moved towards the dragon's tail, where the light was the dimmest. They wanted to see what had happened. During this process, the others gradually woke up. Before they could thank me, they were attracted by the abnormality of the true dragon vein. After everyone had woken up, I returned to my original position. I looked at the small jade bracelet that was emitting a strong light. I pondered for a long time before I clenched my teeth and took the jade bracelet from the true dragon vein while the others weren't paying attention. I quickly put it in my pocket. Chapter 130. It was just as I had imagined. After absorbing the true dragon vein, the jade bracelet didn't have that crazy suction force anymore. I took it off easily. However, the moment the jade bracelet left the true dragon vein, the light from the dragon statue suddenly disappeared. After I put the jade bracelet in my pocket, the entire stone room became gloomy. At this moment, I didn't care about that because the jade bracelet was filled with thick dragon energy and it was shining brightly. I couldn't hide it from others. Thus, when I took the jade bracelet back, I had already thought of a solution. Although the chi of a dragon vein is slightly different from the chi of the way, they come from the same source. The energy I absorbed from the dark green bead a few days ago could perfectly conceal the chi of the way in my body, so it must be able to conceal the chi of the dragon vein as well. Thus, after I took the jade bracelet back, I immediately put it next to the dark green bead. Then, I tried my best to use the dark green energy in my body and the energy I had absorbed from the dark green bead to cover the jade bracelet. Perhaps it was because the dark green energy in my body wasn't enough. When I held the jade bracelet, the energy that I had used wasn't enough to cover the light. However, when I put the jade bracelet next to the dark green bead before I could guide it, the dark green bead suddenly released a huge amount of energy and surged into the jade bracelet. Right after that, the jade bracelet's light disappeared, along with the dragon energy. Its color became dark green, which didn't look eye-catching at all. I heaved a sigh of relief, feeling much more at ease. However, Zhang Wenfei and the others were in an uproar. Everyone was panicking and discussing. While they were talking, they gathered around me. There was still a dim light in the dark. After the true dragon vein disappeared, the stone dragon didn't have the dragon energy's light anymore. However, the stone dragon had been nourished by the dragon energy all year round, so it still had a faint light to illuminate the surroundings. The change in the light in the stone room was transmitted to the outside. Before Zhang Wenfei and the others could come to my side, Director Song Xing's voice came from the crack in the rock. He had always been calm, but now his voice was similar to Zhang Wenfei and the others. He was panic-stricken and shouted at us. "What happened? What happened? What happened to the true dragon vein?" No one answered his question. Zhang Wenfei and the others also shut their mouths, not daring to say a word. Song Xing hurriedly ran in front of us and looked at the barren stone dragon in disbelief. He muttered, "How could this be? How is this possible? The true dragon vein dissipated?" After he said that, he suddenly turned his head and glared at all of us. After a moment of silence, he asked gloomily, "What happened here? Why would the true dragon vein disappear?" "Zhou, you go first." I calmly told him what had happened. Except for the fact that Yuan had absorbed the true dragon's vein, I didn't conceal anything else. After Song Xing listened to me, he didn't say anything. He turned around and asked Zhang Wenfei, who was standing next to me, to tell me what he had encountered after he had entered this place. As Zhang Wenfei was explaining, footsteps could be heard coming from the entrance of the rock wall. A group of people seemed to be walking in this direction. Director Song Xing turned his head abruptly and shouted, "Why are there no rules at all? Is this a place you can enter? Get out!" But the true dragon vein. The people that came in hurriedly tried to explain, but Song Xing didn't bother with them. He shouted again, "Get out!" Those people finally stopped in their tracks. After a moment of silence, they retreated. Song Xing then turned his head. His face was still gloomy as he asked Zhang Wenfei to continue. It could be seen that Director Song Xing had a lot of authority in the Metaphysics Union. At least in the true dragon vein, only President Gu had appeared once. The rest of the time, he was the person in charge. At this moment, those people that had rushed in were definitely the ones that were secretly guarding the true dragon vein. However, they retreated after a single sentence from him. After Zhang Wenfei finished, Song Xing didn't change his expression and continued to let the next person speak. During the entire process, I was quietly listening. At the same time, I was glad that I had been careful and didn't let anyone find any clues. Otherwise, they might have sold me out. I really didn't dare to think about it. After everyone had finished speaking, Song Xing turned his head to look at the dim stone dragon. After a long while, he turned around and spat out 2 words. "Get out." All of us exchanged glances before we hurriedly left the stone room through the crack in the rock. As soon as we got out, we met several middle-aged men in ordinary clothes. They were standing there with anxious faces. As soon as they saw us, they asked in unison, "What happened in there? Why is the true dragon vein no longer emitting light?" Before we could answer, Song Xing's voice resounded from behind. He wasn't talking to us, but to the middle-aged men. "Bring them back to the bus outside. You guys will guard the surroundings of the bus. Without my order, no one is allowed to leave." After saying that, he didn't stop and turn around to return to the crack in the rock. Just like that, we were guarded by the few of them as we returned to the bus that we had come from. After we got into the car, they closed the door. 2 of them got into the car and sat down, while the other 3 stayed outside. For the next day and 2 nights, the 10 of us stayed in the car. Song Xing didn't appear, nor did the other people from the Metaphysics Union. Only the 5 people who were watching over us stayed around us and stared at us covetously. On the morning of the 3rd day, the 5 people seemed to have received an order. The person guarding outside the bus suddenly came in and whispered something to the 2 people in the bus. Then, they informed the driver, and we continued our journey. According to the original plan, we were supposed to return to the Metaphysics Union's headquarters after observing the true dragon vein. However, after such an unforeseen event, I was a little puzzled as to where they were sending us. Although the true dragon vein had an unforeseen event, we were still under strict control on the way back. There were also people who blocked our auras and didn't allow us to get off the bus. The bus traveled for 3 days. When we were waiting outside the true dragon vein, the 10 of us were a little anxious. However, things had calmed down during the past 3 days. Basically, everyone was stabilizing the Tao energy in their bodies and temporarily putting the previous matter aside. I was worried that something might happen, so I didn't dare to absorb the dragon energy from the jade bracelet. I was like the others, slowly stabilizing the Tao energy in my body. After 3 days, the bus finally stopped. After we were allowed to get off the bus, we went out and saw that we had returned to the Metaphysics Union's headquarters. However, after getting off the bus, the 10 of us weren't allowed to move around freely. A group of people brought us to a low room in the headquarters courtyard. After we entered, there was a grim-looking young man waiting for us. He didn't introduce himself, but the first thing he said was for us to take off all our clothes and take out all our belongings. This order made us very resistant, but the man smiled maliciously and said, "You only have 1 minute. If you exceed the time limit, you will be killed on the spot." I suddenly raised my head and looked at the tall, grim-looking young man. I couldn't see through his cultivation, but I could tell from his eyes that he wasn't joking. Su Shuxing suddenly took a step forward, as though he wanted to question him. Zhang Wenfei, who was beside him, pulled him back, and tried to persuade him. At that moment, someone finally started to take off their clothes due to the man's cold aura. With one person taking the lead, the remaining people's mental defenses were quickly broken. Everyone, including me, took off their clothes and placed their belongings on the ground in front of them. The young man frowned when he saw the Qilin tattoo on my chest, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he lowered his head to check my clothes and belongings. Chapter 131. I had to admit that this man had sharp eyes. He could easily recognize the difference between the jade bracelet and the dark green bead from the items I carried with me. I lifted my head to look at him. After pondering for a while, I said, "It's used to raise ghosts." As soon as I said that, the stern young man frowned. The people from the Metaphysics Society also turned to look at me in surprise. In feng shui and many Taoist magic arts, souls or ghosts were used. For example, the 5 ghost transporting technique, the 5-ding 5-jia protective spell, and so on. There was even a low-level technique to invite ghosts to possess one's body. Although it had many uses, in the study of feng shui and orthodox Taoism, the art of raising ghosts was an evil and crooked path. This was because the ghosts used in those techniques were temporarily summoned. They were either wandering souls or wild ghosts from the 9 underworlds. However, the ghost-raising technique required the cultivator to raise ghosts, so it was different in nature. Ghosts and otherworldly items were inauspicious. They could be used, but they couldn't be raised. This was the orthodox point of view in feng shui. Except for some feng shui masters in Nanyang who had learned some superficial Taoist techniques from the Central Plains and some special sects in the country, there were very few people who knew how to raise ghosts. After listening to me, people were startled. They didn't understand why a feng shui master with a good cultivation base like me would raise ghosts. The stern young man kept silent for a while. Then, he said to me, "Summon the ghosts." I nodded and hesitated for a while. Then, I contacted Tong Tong and asked her to release 2 ghosts from her jade bracelet. Very quickly, a stream of light flashed before everyone's eyes, and 2 faint spirits appeared before them. However, after they appeared, the spirits did not pounce at them like before. Instead, they stood there, not daring to move. In fact, their bodies were even trembling. I understood that this place was the headquarters of the Metaphysics Society, so it was protected by a formation that could restrain ghosts and evil spirits. Although ordinary people couldn't sense it, ghosts wouldn't dare to act rashly. It was just like the old witch. When she found me, I could have fought her if I had released all the ghosts in my jade bracelet. However, she had attacked me in the Shenzhen branch. There was a formation there, so it was useless to summon the ghosts. The cold-faced young man stared at the 2 ghosts for a while and didn't say anything. He just waved his hand in the direction of the door. Soon after, 2 men in black hurried to come. Call 2 people who know how to raise ghosts. I could see that the stern young man had a high position. After he gave his order, the 2 men in black didn't question him and immediately left. The room fell into silence. The young man stood there with his eyes slightly narrowed, not moving an inch. Around 10 minutes later, the 2 men in black returned to report. They were accompanied by 2 sinister old men. These 2 old men should be the ones who knew how to raise ghosts. As soon as I saw them, I understood. Those who know the art of ghost rearing must have frequent contact with ghosts, so their bodies are contaminated with ghost energy. Looking at their gloomy expressions, it is obvious that they are quite accomplished in this field. What shocked me was that the ghost-raising technique was that the Metaphysics Union could find 2 people who knew how to raise ghosts in such a short time. This kind of efficiency was really scary. The 2 old men were very respectful to this young man. They clasped their hands and were about to greet him. However, the young man interrupted them. He pointed at the 2 spirits I had summoned, the jade bracelet and the black bead. He said to the 2 old men, "Please check if these 2 items are used to raise ghosts." The 2 old men didn't dare to be negligent. They walked to me and picked up the jade bracelet and the black bead. After studying them for a few minutes, they turned to the young man and said, "These 2 items have ghost energy lingering around them. I can sense the aura of the two ghosts. They should be used to raise ghosts. I had told Tong Tong to cover the jade bracelet and the black bead with Yin energy. After listening to them, I heaved a sigh of relief. However, one of the old men with a slightly protruding head hesitantly added, "But my heart sank. Did he find something wrong?" The cold-faced young man also frowned and asked, "But what?" The bald old man muttered to himself for a moment, then said, "The yin qi on these two things is quite thick, and it doesn't seem like it could be emitted by these two little yin spirits. I'm afraid there are other ghosts with high cultivations inside." After listening to him, the young man turned to me and said coldly, "I'll give you one more chance. Summon the thing inside." This time I was silent. The bald old man was talking about Tong Tong. However, Tong Tong was a natural fetus. If I called her out, would this young man or the two old men who had profound knowledge of the ghost-raising technique recognize her? It's not a good thing for Tong Tong or me to have such a treasure. After pondering for a while, I told Tong Tong to conceal her spirit. Then I called her out. The Metaphysics Union wouldn't let go of even the slightest suspicion. If I insisted on not calling Tong Tong out, it was hard to predict what would happen in the end. After Tong Tong came out, the temperature in the room dropped by a few degrees. Waves of Yin energy surged. After so many years, I had gotten used to Tong Tong's Yin energy. However, she was a ghost and a rare natural fetus. Her Yin energy was really heavy and terrifying. The two old men were shocked. After a moment of silence, the bald old man couldn't help but ask me, "Since you're raising this female ghost, I'm afraid she has the power of a ghost marshal, right?" Ghosts and spirits had different levels according to their cultivation base. Above ordinary ghosts, there were ghost generals, ghost marshals, ghost kings, and finally, ghost immortals. Ghost immortals were also called Yin spirits. Their power was comparable to the heavenly masters. As for the other three realms, they corresponded to the three realms of the earth masters. I nodded and said, "She should be at the ghost martial realm." I didn't know Tong Tong's real power. However, when I had dealt with Han Wen-Nan, I had poured all of my Tao energy into the Yama brush. Tong Tong's Yin energy had easily reached the same level as mine. In terms of power, she was stronger than me. There was no doubt that she had reached the ghost martial realm. After the bald old man nodded, he didn't say anything else. The young man with a cold face looked at me one more time. Then, he turned around and checked Zhang Wenfei's belongings. I exhaled in relief. I hurried to bring Tong Tong and the other two ghosts back into the jade bracelet. What happened next wasn't surprising. After the man checked around, he didn't find anything suspicious. Eventually, he let us go. After putting on our clothes and taking our belongings, we hurried to leave the place. The people from the Metaphysics Union arranged for us to stay in a nearby manor. On the way there, I saw people from the other branches. I finally felt relieved. It seemed the Union had temporarily put down their suspicions about us. However, it was different from the time when we were in the True Dragon Vein. This time, we were arranged to stay in the Gue area. After the people from the headquarters left, the others quickly gathered in my and Zhang Wenfei's room. Everyone's expression was filled with resentment. When they talked about how they were forced to take off their clothes, all of them were extremely angry, especially Su Shuxing. He shouted that this matter couldn't be settled and that he had to seek justice. Why did the people from the Metaphysics headquarters have to treat us like this? Unlike them, this matter started because of me, after taking their True Dragon's vein, not to mention forcing me to take off my clothes. Even if they wanted to take my life, it would be my own fault. There was no one else to blame. I forced a smile and comforted them for a long time. Eventually, they calmed down a little. Although they were saying that they were powerful, in reality, everyone knew in their hearts that the implications of this matter were too great. It would be good enough if they could guarantee that they would not be implicated. There was no way they would be able to get justice. After discussing this matter, we shifted the topic to the Young Phoenix Festival. According to the rules of the Union, the Young Phoenix Festival would start in half a month after everyone had left the True Dragon Vein and gathered at the Union. According to our calculations, after this delay, we still have about 10 days to prepare. Previously, at the True Dragon Vein, with my help, the 10 people of the Guangdong branch all absorbed enough Dragon Vein Qi and reached the Qi Gathering Pillar realm. However, this realm has not been completely stabilized, and it will take some time to stabilize it. In addition, after the realm is stabilized, some preparation work will be done to guide the Dragon Qi baptism. Thus, the time before the Young Phoenix Festival was very tight and couldn't be wasted. After discussing this issue, no one brought up the matter of being forced to take off their clothes. After all, compared to the humiliation, preparing for the Young Phoenix Festival was the most important thing. After a simple discussion, everyone returned to their rooms to continue cultivating and stabilizing their realms. Zhang Wenfei and I also did the same. On the way back, I didn't dare to absorb the Dragon Qi as I was worried that the True Dragon Vein's aura would leak. Now that the dark green energy's concealment ability had fooled everyone, I could finally absorb it without worry. I sat cross-legged on the bed and separated the dark green energy from the jade bracelet. In a split second, the dense Dragon Qi surged towards me and was completely absorbed into my body. Since there were still 4 empty light pillars in my body, I didn't dare to waste any time. From that night onwards, I continued to absorb the Dragon Qi without rest. Even though the efficiency of absorbing the Dragon Qi through the jade bracelet was very high, I couldn't recklessly absorb it as I was in the Metaphysics Association's headquarters. While I was absorbing, I tried my best to move the dark green energy to cover all traces. Not to mention the people from the Metaphysics Association's headquarters. Even Zhang Wenfei, who was sitting not far from me, couldn't detect it. After cultivating crazily for 4 days, I had finally filled all 5 Dragon Qi pillars in my body. I heaved a sigh of relief, but I couldn't conceal my excitement. There were a total of 5 Dragon Qi pillars. Previously, I didn't dare to think that I could fill all of them. Who knew that in just a few days, the True Dragon Vein had filled all 5 of the Dragon Qi pillars. The amount of Dragon Qi contained in them was 5 times that of a person in the same realm. If I were to tell others about it, it would probably scare them to death. As for the True Dragon Vein and the Jade Bracelet, there wasn't much change after I had absorbed it. After all, it was an entire True Dragon Vein. The amount of Dragon Vein's Qi was extremely terrifying. Even if I had more than 100 Dragon Qi pillars in my body, I wouldn't be able to absorb it all. Moreover, the True Dragon Vein was a cycle. The Dragon Vein's Qi could be produced on its own. No matter how much I absorbed, it would be able to replenish the Dragon Vein's Qi with time. This was a treasury that could continuously produce Dragon Vein's Qi. Even if my power increased in the future, it would still be very useful to me. I had really gained a huge advantage this time. Of course, I wasn't satisfied with my current realm. I started to think about what I had to do next. Stabilizing my current realm required a process. This process couldn't be rushed and had to be done slowly. Judging from the time, the 5 Qi pillars in my body definitely wouldn't be able to stabilize when the fledgling Phoenix gathering started. However, we were ranked last among all the branches, so there should be enough time for me to stabilize. After I stopped my crazy cultivation, Zhang Wenfei had already stabilized his Qi gathering pillar realm. In terms of talent, he was actually the best in the Guangdong branch. If I didn't have the jade bracelet, it would be hard to say if my talent could compare to his. Seeing that I had woken up from my cultivation realm, Zhang Wenfei happily called out to me and asked, "Are you done?" I nodded hesitantly. "You can say that. My realm hadn't stabilized, but the 5 Qi pillars have been filled up. It could be considered done. It's good that you're done. I just contacted my eldest senior brother. Originally, I wanted to ask him to take us to play around nearby. However, after talking with him, I received an incredible piece of news." Zhang Wenfei's face was flushed, and he was extremely excited. "What news?" I asked him curiously. Zhang Wenfei moved closer to me and said mysteriously, "Yi Pianpian, she's at the headquarters right now." I was dumbfounded. I thought it was some good news that would help our cultivation, but it turned out that this fellow was love-struck again. My eldest senior brother said that if there's a chance tomorrow, he'll take us to see Yi Pianpian secretly. Don't you think that's good news? Ha! My dream of many years will finally come true tomorrow. This fellow seemed to have gone crazy as he stood there and kept laughing. He was the perfect image of a lunatic. I curled my lips and was about to say something when there was a knock on the door. Only a few people from our branch would come to the headquarters to knock on the door, so Zhang Wenfei didn't hide his excitement. He stood there and laughed hysterically. But when I went to open the door, the smile on Zhang Wenfei's face suddenly froze. Then his eyes widened to an exaggerated degree, and his mouth opened wide. Even I was shocked and couldn't help but open my eyes wide. Chapter 132. Why is she here all of a sudden? I was stunned for a long time. Before I could speak, Zhang Wenfei, who was behind me, screamed and slapped himself hard on the face. He muttered, "It must be an illusion. It must be an illusion." Yi Pianpian was startled by his reaction. She looked at us with a puzzled expression. This guy is too embarrassing. I quickly moved to block Yi Pianpian's line of sight. I asked her with a smile, "Did you come back from there?" It had been more than a month since I had left the Fire God Temple. Yi Pianpian had naturally returned long ago. Hearing my question, she retracted her gaze and glanced at me. However, she didn't mention anything about the Fire God Temple. Instead, she said faintly, "Let's talk inside." Then, she directly walked into the room. Feeling helpless, I had to step aside and follow her into the room. At this time, Zhang Wenfei was still standing there in a daze. Looking at him, I didn't dare to remind him in front of Yi Pianpian. I pointed at Yi Pianpian and said to him, "Brother Zhang, let me introduce you. This is Yi Pianpian, the Vice President of the Metaphysics Union." After saying that, I winked at him to remind him to watch his behavior. However, this guy's eyes were completely fixed on Yi Pianpian, and he didn't notice my wink at all. His face was red, and he rubbed his hands together. He looked like he wanted to greet me, but didn't dare to. I had no choice but to point at him and introduce him to Yi Pianpian. This is Zhang Wenfei from our Shenzhen branch. You may know his senior brother. He's Zhang Canwen, the director of the union. Senior brother Zhang? Yi Pianpian looked at Zhang Wenfei again and nodded. Senior brother Zhang has mentioned you to me. Really? Zhang Wenfei finally spoke in a trembling voice. The shocked expression on his face finally disappeared and was replaced by surprise. At this time, I looked at Yi Pianpian in confusion. This girl was beautiful, but she was too arrogant. Most of the time, she didn't talk much. I didn't expect that after not seeing her for more than a month, she could talk more normally. Just as I was thinking about this, I saw Yi Pianpian turn to Zhang Wenfei and say, "I came to talk to Zhou Yi about something today. Can you go out for a while?" Zhang Wenfei's smile froze. After 2 seconds, he hurriedly nodded and left the room in a hurry with a face full of disappointment, leaving me standing on the side with a bitter smile. I looked at Yi Pianpian helplessly. I had misjudged her. Her temper was still as straightforward as before. She hadn't changed at all. After Zhang Wenfei went out and closed the door, I pointed at the stool next to me and asked Yi Pianpian to sit down. Then, I sat down on the bed not far from her. "What do you want?" Yi Pianpian's eyes gazed at me, giving me goosebumps. After a while, she opened her mouth. "Are you behind the true dragon's vein?" I was stunned for a moment before displeasure rose in my heart. "You've already gone to take a look yourself. All of your powers are so high, so you should have already discovered something. Why are you staring at me? What do you think I can do with my strength?" Yi Pianpian shook her head and said, "I'm talking about the true dragon's vein of the Metaphysics Association." This time, my heart suddenly shivered. Did this woman discover something? Thinking about it, it shouldn't be. She wasn't at the true dragon's vein. Zhang Wenfei didn't even notice when I was absorbing the qi of the dragon's vein these past few days, let alone the others. Why did she suddenly say that? I inexplicably felt that Yi Pianpian was a little scary. She seemed to have an innate intuition. Previously at the Fire God Temple, she insisted that I was hiding something. Although the Metaphysics Association had been interrogating us, in reality, I reckoned that the people from the association wouldn't think that we were behind it. The reason was very simple. It was the true dragon's vein. Our dragon-seeking realm Earth masters were too weak. The possibility of us playing tricks was very small. Otherwise, the association wouldn't have let us come back to prepare for the young phoenix gathering after such a simple investigation. However, Ypiampian asked me as soon as she saw me. After interacting with her, I roughly knew her character. She would say whatever she wanted to say. Since she asked me that, it meant that she was very suspicious of me. I instantly became cautious. This was different from the Fire God Temple incident. I had provided the Metaphysics Association with the Fire God Temple, so it was my credit. Even if the Metaphysics Association knew that I was hiding something, they wouldn't do anything. However, if the Metaphysics Association found out that I was behind this incident, killing me would be considered a light punishment. I don't know what happened to the True Dragon's vein, but I'll say it again. With my strength, what do you think I can do? You're just a young lady, so why are your thoughts so heavy? I pretended to be relaxed and said to her, as if I didn't care. Ypiampian wasn't easily fooled by me. Instead, she looked at me with a burning gaze. After hesitating for a moment, she said, "Your strength isn't high, but I can't see through you." Can't see through me? What does that mean? Before I could understand, she changed the topic and talked about the Fire God Temple. That river is the Yellow Springs River that you mentioned. What exactly is that underwater monster? I spread my hands again. Do you think that I would know about such a terrifying thing? Ypiampian was probably immune to my "I don't know anything" attitude, so she didn't show any disgust on her face. She calmly said, "Vice President Young told me last time that when you guys crossed the river together, you were at the back and even stepped on a monster's head. Yet, you weren't attacked, and the monster sent you across instead. After that, you even reached out to touch it, and it didn't attack you. Director Fong Xing, who was traveling with you, was killed in one hit when he reached out to touch the monster. This time, she really wronged me. I had never heard of a golden head before. As for why it didn't kill me, and even gave me a dark green bead, even I thought it was weird. I was too lazy to explain, so I directly asked her, "Why were you born as a human? Why was my dog born as a dog?" Ypiampian was stunned and frowned. I thought she was going to get angry, but after a while, she said seriously, "It's probably because I did good deeds in my previous life, so I became a human that gathered the spirits of all living beings." Huh. I didn't know that this little girl's temper had calmed down recently. I smiled at her. That's why I guessed that it was because I did good deeds in my previous life that the monster treated me well. Why else do you think it was? Ypiampian glared at me and kept silent for a long time. She finally gave up on this question and stood up. It seemed that she didn't want to argue with me anymore. She directly said, "After I came back from Shenangjia a few days ago, I went to Kaifeng first. I've investigated the situation of the people who were traveling with you. I originally didn't want to force you, but the Metaphysics Association's True Dragon Vein has a problem. If we can't find a way to restore it in a short period of time, the Metaphysics Association won't have the patience to slowly search for a new True Dragon Vein. At that time, the headquarters will definitely use some special methods." After saying that, she looked at me seriously and said, "I won't be the one to find you, and they won't be as polite as I am." I instantly became silent. She was right. At that time, a group of more than 10 people had all disappeared. No one knew if they were alive or dead. With the Metaphysics Association's power, it wouldn't be difficult for them to investigate this matter. Moreover, she was right. If nothing happened to the True Dragon Vein in the Metaphysics Association, even if they knew that I was hiding something, they would tolerate it. However, the original True Dragon Vein had disappeared. If we couldn't find a new True Dragon Vein, the Metaphysics Association's 100-year foundation would be destroyed. At this moment, the Metaphysics Association definitely wouldn't tolerate me hiding anything. After hesitating for a while, I prepared to tell Ypiampian the truth about the Fire God Temple. The reason why I hid it from the Metaphysics Association was because the fatty's father had just gone in to save the fatty. I was worried that something might have happened. Now that more than a month had passed, the fatty would have been saved if everything had gone smoothly. There was no harm in telling her. However, before I could say anything, Ypiampian directly walked to the door. When she reached the door, She said, "I'll give you a few more days. If you don't come and find me before the fledgling Phoenix gathering ends, Lu Chingan from the supervision office will come and find you." I subconsciously asked her, "Who's Lu Chingan? You met him a few days ago when you arrived at the headquarters. Also, I wish you all the best at the fledgling Phoenix gathering." With these last words, Yi Piampian closed the door behind her and left. I was stunned. Yi Piampian wished me all the best at the fledgling Phoenix gathering? This girl wasn't this kind before. And that Lu Chingan, how many days ago did I meet him? I recalled the young man with a stern face. It was most likely him. While I was thinking, the door was pushed open again. Then Zhang Wenfei rushed in front of me and grabbed my arm with both of his hands. "Why did she come to find you? You've known Yi Piampian for a long time, haven't you? Why didn't you tell me?" I helplessly spread my arms. "I didn't tell you that I didn't know her." Zhang Wenfei glared at me. After a while, he screamed and jumped on his bed. He looked at the ceiling in a daze and muttered, "It's over. It's the first time I've met her. I wasn't prepared at all. She must think that I'm a fool. It's over." After muttering to himself for a long time, he seemed to have thought of something and started laughing. He jumped up from the bed and threw himself next to me. He said to me with a flattering expression, "Brother Zhou, can we discuss something?" His sinister expression made me wary. I asked him suspiciously, "What is it? You're very familiar with Yi Piampian, right?" I shook my head. "I just know her." Zhang Wenfei hurriedly said, "Don't be modest. Although I've never met Yi Piampian before, I know her very well. When has she ever been so close to a man? Not to mention being in the same room as you and chatting for so long. This is absolutely unprecedented. Take Han Wennan, for example. Although he's arrogant, Yi Piampian hasn't even looked him in the eye. The only time they really interacted was when he claimed that Yi Piampian was his woman and got beaten up by her." I was speechless. What did he mean by private and in the same room? After this guy's exaggeration, even I felt that my relationship with Yi Piampian wasn't normal. Zhang Wenfei said again, "Since you guys are so close, can you ask her to let me take a picture with her?" I thought about it. Although Yi Piampian was cold and arrogant, we still knew each other. It shouldn't be too much to ask for a picture with her. If I brought Zhang Wenfei to see her, she probably wouldn't refuse. However, I felt that something was wrong. I asked Zhang Wenfei, "Don't you like Yi Piampian? After I introduce you, you could just ask her out for a meal or something. Why do you want to take a picture with her? It's like chasing after a star. It's a bit weird." Zhang Wenfei smiled bitterly. "It's true that I like her, but liking her from a distance is the same as chasing after a star. The moment I was defeated by Lu Jinyang in the competition, I had already given up. Yi Piampian is too far away from me to get close to. It's more appropriate to like her as an idol. So, do you agree to take a picture with her or not?" It seemed that he had gotten over it. I nodded. During the Young Phoenix Society, I have something to discuss with her. I'll take you with me. If nothing unexpected happens, she should agree. Zhang Wenfei was so excited that he danced with joy for a long time. Then he came over and said mysteriously, "I'm sure that I have no hope, so I want to take a photo with her. But you can't give up. I think the intimacy between you two is much more promising than Han Wennan. You've defeated him in the last competition. You can't lose to Yi Piampian this time." I was stunned. What was he talking about? Why was he talking about me again? I hurried to explain, "Don't talk nonsense. We're contacts. The Metaphysics Society needs my help." Zhang Wenfei snorted at my words. "Yi Piampian is so beautiful and strong. Do you dare say you don't like her? It's good that we have work contacts. That way, we can slowly cultivate our relationship. When the time comes, you can take the #1 beauty of our Metaphysics Society and make Han Wennan and Lu Jinyang jealous." Haha, it feels good just thinking about it. I couldn't communicate with him anymore. I curled my lips and lay on the bed to stabilize the Tao energy in my body. Chapter 133. Early the next morning, Zhang Wenfei Sr., Zhang Canwen, suddenly came to our room. He had a full beard and looked very old, but according to Zhang Wenfei, he was only in his 30s. After all, He was a senior from our Guangdong branch. When we talked, his tone was very friendly. He was probably talking about the ranking competition. After Zhang Wenfei introduced me as Zhou Yi, he laughed and patted my shoulder. With you here, our Guangdong branch will be proud. Yi Piampian awakened 3 meridians in the previous competition. I think you're not bad either. You can also create a 3-meridian Earth Master. This guy was the same as Zhang Wenfei. He was old, but still had no control over his words. I smiled wryly. A 3-meridian Earth Master? I don't even dare to think about it. I'll burn incense if I can completely awaken 1 meridian. I wasn't being modest. Not counting the 5 light pillars, I didn't even have a chance to awaken 1 meridian with my original talent. Zhang Canwen stroked his beard and reprimanded me. You're so young, but why don't you have any vigor? It said that setting a high ambition will be a medium ambition, setting a medium ambition will be a small ambition, and setting a small ambition won't be a big ambition. If you don't even dare to set an ambition, how will you achieve it in the future? The son of the Han family has always had at least 1 meridian talent. Since you could defeat him, it proves that your talent is definitely stronger than his. I think you should at least awaken 2 meridians. If you're lucky and awaken 3 meridians, our Metaphysics Association will have 2 peerless geniuses. Ha! Talent really couldn't be calculated like that. At that time, I used the power of my eyes and the mysterious black bead to barely win against Han Wenan. In terms of talent, I really couldn't compare to him. However, although Zhang Canwen was reprimanding me, he didn't have any malicious intent. He was just encouraging me. I naturally didn't feel offended and said with a smile, then I'll reluctantly set an ambition of 2 meridians. No, 3 meridians. When I said 2 meridians, Zhang Canwen glared at me. I had no choice but to say 3 meridians. He stroked his beard to express his satisfaction. But then again, with 5 light pillars and 5 times the talent, there should be hope for 2 meridians, right? 3 meridians might also be possible. From this point of view, Zhang Canwen's estimation of my talent wasn't wrong. After chatting for a while, Zhang Canwen told Zhang Wenfei that he wanted to take him to see Yi Piampian. Unexpectedly, Zhang Wenfei glanced at him and said, I'm not going. I just saw it yesterday. I can't be bothered to watch it again today. Huh? Zhang Canwen was very surprised and asked, she just returned to the headquarters yesterday. How did you see her? Hee, you don't know about this. Zhang Wenfei glanced at me with shifty eyes, then told me about what happened last night with some embellishments. After hearing that, Zhang Canwen was stunned. After a long while, he suddenly raised his finger at me and stared at me with his huge eyes. He praised, I've heard people say that if you understand one thing, you'll understand 100 things. I didn't believe it at first, but I didn't expect it to be true. The younger generation will surpass us in time, truly surpassing us in time. This time I was speechless. I shrugged and didn't bother to explain. Then, we returned to the main topic and talked about the fledgling Phoenix gathering. I suddenly remembered that my Dao Qi hadn't completely stabilized yet, so I asked him about the fledgling Phoenix gathering. I wanted to know the order of the Dragon Qi baptism and whether it would be done according to the previous rankings. After all, I hadn't experienced the fledgling Phoenix gathering or the Dragon Qi baptism, so it wasn't appropriate for me to speculate. It was safer to ask him, who knew that Zhang Canwen would give me a bad answer. According to him, the fledgling Phoenix gathering would only last for 2 days. On the first day, everyone would undergo the Dragon Qi baptism under the protection of the Metaphysics Association. They would open their meridians and officially reach the pressure point realm. That day was known as the fledgling Phoenix cry. On the second day, people from the previous fledgling Phoenix gathering would participate together. The fledgling Phoenix gathering's name came from the meaning of the young phoenix is clearer than the old phoenix's voice. Therefore, after the fledgling Phoenix cry, they would naturally have to challenge the old phoenix. Of course, the old phoenix only referred to the people from the previous fledgling Phoenix gathering who were still in the pressure point realm. People like Yi Piampian, who had already advanced to the glorious consciousness realm, naturally didn't count. In fact, Yi Piampian was just an exception. In the history of the Metaphysics Association, there were very few people who had advanced 2 realms in just 3 years, so it couldn't be considered a common occurrence. Moreover, people from the current and the previous fledgling Phoenix gathering were allowed to exchange pointers with each other. There were no restrictions. After all, there weren't many opportunities for all the branches in the country to gather together. It was also the Metaphysics Association's intention to use this opportunity to exchange pointers. That day was known as the fledgling Phoenix spreads its wings. 2 days later, the fledgling Phoenix gathering would officially end. As the branches returned, the events of the fledgling Phoenix gathering would spread throughout the world. Moreover, the Metaphysics Association would also publish some publications to record the events of the fledgling Phoenix gathering in detail. After listening to his detailed explanation, my expression changed. The Dragon Chi baptism would only last for 1 day. This was completely different from what I had expected. At this moment, I hadn't even stabilized my second Tao Chi pillar, and there were only 5 days left before the fledgling Phoenix gathering officially began. What should I do? According to my calculations, the second light pillar would stabilize tomorrow. Even if I didn't sleep or rest, I would need at least 2 days to stabilize each light pillar. In other words, on the day of the fledgling Phoenix gathering, I would only be able to stabilize 3 or 4 at most. Even if I added the first day of the fledgling Phoenix gathering, I wouldn't be able to completely stabilize 5 light pillars. An unstable Tao Chi pillar wouldn't be able to undergo the Dragon Vein baptism. The process of the Dragon Chi baptism was to use Tao Chi to attack one's acupuncture points. An unstable Tao Chi couldn't be controlled at all. Once it was carried out recklessly, the lightest consequence would be Chi deviation. Not only would one's Tao Chi be destroyed, one would also be severely injured. This was also one of the reasons why the Metaphysics Association held the fledgling Phoenix gathering every year. After all, it wasn't easy to obtain a true dragon vein. Every feng shui master who could reach this step was the Metaphysics Association's most valuable asset. The Metaphysics Association wanted to ensure that everyone could smoothly reach the acupoint ceiling realm. This was to prevent the feng shui masters of the smaller branches from having problems when they went back to attack their acupuncture points. At the fledgling Phoenix gathering, with the guidance and help from the Metaphysics Association, the danger could be reduced to the minimum. What should I do? Should I just stabilize 4 Tao Chi pillars and disperse the 5th one so that I can undergo the Dragon Chi baptism at the fledgling Phoenix gathering? No, I can't do that. Opening the meridians is too important. Every additional Tao Chi pillar is of great help in attacking the acupuncture points. No matter what, I can't give it up. It seems that I can only do my best and leave the rest to fate. If I can't stabilize all the Tao Chi at the fledgling Phoenix gathering, I might as well give up on the Dragon Vein baptism here. I'll wait until the future to complete the process. After making up my mind, I didn't slack off. As long as there was a chance, it would be best to finish it here. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what would happen if I dragged it out and messed around. After chatting with Zhang Kanwen for a while, he said that he wanted to show us around and introduce the headquarters to us. Of course, I didn't want to do that, so I tactfully rejected him. I need to stabilize my Tao Chi realm. Zhang Wenfei found it strange, but he didn't say anything. He followed his senior brother alone. After they left, I immediately sat cross-legged on my bed and began to stabilize the Tao Chi in my body. For the next 5 days, I didn't even take a step out of my room. I didn't even sleep. I only did one thing every day, and that was to stabilize my Tao Chi. Fortunately, everything was peaceful these days. Nothing unexpected happened, and no one came to disturb me. Even Zhang Wenfei didn't ask anything. He just silently brought food to my room every day. After a full 5 days, I finally stabilized all 4 Tao Chi pillars on the night before the fledgling Phoenix gathering. There was only one left. In terms of time, this was already the fastest speed that I could estimate. However, this was useless. It didn't matter if I was short of 1 or 2. There wasn't enough time left. I didn't sleep or rest for 5 days. Although my body didn't feel tired with the support of the Tao Chi, my mind was exhausted. I stood up from the bed, stretched a bit, and then directly lay down to sleep. I'd been burning with anxiety for the past few days. This kind of mood wasn't good for stabilizing the Tao Qi in my body. Relaxation was the way to go. Since I couldn't make it to the fledgling Phoenix gathering, I might as well take a break and adjust my mind before making any plans. However, in the middle of the night, I couldn't help but get up again. Although there wasn't enough time, my Tao Qi should be stabilized with the addition of the 2 days of the fledgling Phoenix gathering. When the time came for the Dragon Qi baptism, the Metaphysics Association would pay great attention to my talent. They might even send someone to protect me. Although I might not be able to make a name for myself at the fledgling Phoenix gathering, I wouldn't get any benefits. I'm a very pragmatic person. Compared to a false reputation, personal benefits are more important. After thinking about it, I continue to work hard. The next day, when everyone set off for the fledgling Phoenix gathering, the 5th Tao Qi pillar had stabilized by about 10%. Originally, I didn't want to participate in the fledgling Phoenix gathering, but the headquarters requested that everyone attend. I had no choice but to agree. On the way to the venue with Zhang Wenfei and the others, I thought that I could continue to stabilize my Tao Qi during the fledgling Phoenix gathering. Moreover, I could watch the process of the others undergoing the Dragon Qi baptism. It would definitely be helpful to me, so it wouldn't be a waste of time. With that thought, I calmed down a lot. When we arrived at the Metaphysics Association's venue, it was still the same as the true dragon vein. There were 10 regions according to the heavenly stems, but it was different from before. The staff of the Metaphysics Association directly brought the people from the Guangdong branch to Region B. This was because the ranking was based on the number of people who had reached the Qi gathering realm. With my help at the True Dragon Vein, the 10 people from the Guangdong branch had all reached this realm. Although we were ranked last in the True Dragon Vein Observation Division, this result was even better than the previous few divisions of our branch. We were ranked first among all the branches, and there were only a total of 4 branches that reached this level. The reason why we were placed in Zone B was because our results in previous years were not as good as the others. Otherwise, we would have even had the right to sit in Zone A. After sitting down in Region B, Zhang Wenfei and the others were a little emotional. Su Shuxing said, "This year's fledgling Phoenix gathering should be our branch's highest ranking, right?" Zhang Wenfei immediately replied, "That's right. Not only is our current ranking at the top, after the fledgling Phoenix gathering is over, our branch will definitely be at the top of this year's fledgling Phoenix Chronicles published by the Metaphysics Association. We might even be ranked first." Once he said that, the others immediately agreed. That's right. Zhou Yi was stronger than Han Wenan previously, so his talent naturally surpassed his. Han Wenan is already the strongest among the younger generation. This time, Zhou Yi will definitely be ranked first on the fledgling Phoenix ranking. The title of Fledgling Phoenix Chronicles belongs to Zhou Yi. The Fledgling Phoenix Chronicles they were talking about was a commemorative publication that the Metaphysics Association would publish and distribute to the branches after the fledgling Phoenix gathering. It would record in detail what had happened at the fledgling Phoenix gathering and rank each branch. Of course, individuals would also be ranked, which was what they called the fledgling Phoenix ranking. Every year's fledgling Phoenix ranking would receive the title of Fledgling Phoenix. The previous fledgling Phoenix was Yi Pianpian. Chapter 134. There was still one more pillar of light left. Even if I gave up on that pillar, I would still have decent talent and might even be able to enter the Rising Phoenix rankings. However, if there was a better choice, I wouldn't give up on the 5th pillar for no reason. It's just that this way, the crowd will be disappointed in me when the time comes. After thinking about it, I called out to Zhang Wenfei and decided to tell them about it. When it came to this kind of thing, they would not be so disappointed when the time came. Otherwise, they would inevitably feel sad if they were disappointed when the time came. I used a calm voice and slowly said to Zhang Wenfei, "You've seen for the past few days that I've been desperately trying to stabilize the Tao Qi in my body. However, my Tao Qi is a bit strange and it still hasn't stabilized. I'm afraid I'll miss the Rising Phoenix gathering. What? Zhang Wenfei was stunned. After a while, he asked in disbelief, how is that possible? Even our Dao Qi has stabilized. How could this happen to you? With that, he continued with a worried expression. Is there something wrong with your Dao Qi? How about I get my senior brother to take a look? I quickly shook my head. There's nothing wrong with my Dao Qi. I can sense it, but because my cultivation is different from ordinary people, I'll need around 2 more days to stabilize my Dao Qi. I most likely won't be able to make it for the Rising Phoenix gathering. What should we do? Our branch is counting on you to gain face. Zhang Wenfei hastily asked. How about we contact the headquarters and ask them to postpone the Rising Phoenix gathering for 2 more days? As soon as he said this, even he knew it was impossible. Without waiting for my reply, he bitterly smiled. That definitely won't work, the group discussed for a long time. In the end, everyone looked dejected. Zhang Wenfei helplessly said, if it really doesn't work, then we can only do this. However, Zhou Yi, you should try your best to stabilize your Dao Qi. You won't be able to make it for the Rising Phoenix gathering. As long as we're still at the headquarters, it'll be safer for you to undergo the Dragon Qi baptism. He had the same thought as I did. I nodded. I'll try my best. I should be able to completely stabilize my Dao Qi in around 2 days. After we finished talking, Su Shuxing suddenly pointed in the distance. Look, the people from the Yunnan branch are here. We raised our heads in astonishment. At the entrance of the venue, Bai Qiwen was brought in by the staff of the headquarters. However, what was strange was that there was no one else around him. He walked all the way into the venue alone. I turned around to check. At this moment, only the Gue area was empty. The other areas were all occupied. It seemed that Bai Qiwen was the only one in the Yunnan branch who had reached the Qi-drawing realm and was qualified to participate in the Young Phoenix gathering. Although I was the one who had injured all of them that day, the result still surprised me. Of course, he was only surprised. This group of people had done the first thing, so they couldn't blame him for retaliating. They were the ones who committed the sin first, so they had to pay the price. That was fair. Ha, those shameless bastards. So what if they snatched our spots? Didn't they still end up back in Area Gue? Trash should go back to where they belong. At that moment, Bai Qiwen happened to pass by us. Su Shuxing wasn't polite and deliberately mocked him loudly. Bai Qiwen's footsteps stopped. He lifted his head to look at us. His gaze finally stopped on me. His eyes were filled with resentment, but at the same time, there was also an intense fear. It seemed that I'd left a deep scar on him that day. Because of Bai Qiwen and the Yunnan branch, Su Shuxing and the others had almost ruined their futures. Even if things didn't develop to that point, they still felt resentful. After Su Shuxing finished speaking, the others also started to mock him. Bai Qiwen didn't retort. I guess that he didn't dare to retort. After glancing at me, he immediately lowered his head and left. The members of the Guangdong branch angrily sat down, but they were still cursing the Yunnan branch. At that moment, I suddenly felt a burning gaze looking at me from the side. I subconsciously turned my head and saw Lu Jinyang sitting not far from me. I hadn't noticed before, but it turned out that the Beijing branch was also sitting in Area B. Lu Jinyang's gaze was sinister. When he saw me turn my head to look at him, he didn't avert his gaze. Instead, he revealed a cold and resentful smile. I found it strange. Whether it was injuring Zhang Wenfei or secretly provoking the other branches to deal with us, it was all because of his tricks. Now, he was resentful towards me. It was really strange. Even if I said that he had injured Zhang Wenfei on the stage, it wasn't a big deal according to the standard of him injuring Zhang Wenfei. Moreover, we had a life and death duel. Logically speaking, he should be grateful that I didn't kill him. It was a pity that some people weren't meant to be reasonable. They only allowed themselves to deal with others. If others dared to resist, it was definitely the other party's fault. There was no need to pay attention to such people. Although the Liu family in the capital was powerful, I didn't believe that they could do anything to me in the metaphysics society. When I returned to Shenzhen, I definitely wouldn't stay in the Shenzhen branch for long. At that time, I wouldn't be afraid of him playing any tricks. This was the reason why I dared to take away his yellow and white seal artifact. Just as I turned my head to ignore him, he stood up and walked towards us. After all, he was a member of the Liu family in the capital. When the other members of the Beijing branch saw him walk over, they immediately followed behind him loyally, as if they were afraid that he would be at a disadvantage. Seeing them like this, Zhang Wenfei and the others immediately stood up from their seats and stood around me. They glared at the members of the Beijing branch. Liu Xinjiang completely ignored our actions. He walked in front of me and stood still. He said to me in a sharp voice, "Zhou Yi, I was careless and was defeated by you once during the ranking competition. But don't be too happy. This is the Young Phoenix Gathering. After today, I will let you know what a genius is. Also, I advise you to return my Mount Tai seal to me. Our Liu family isn't someone you can mess with." So that yellow and white seal was called the Mount Tai seal. I didn't know if it had anything to do with the Mount Tai stone. This guy was quite interesting. He didn't dare to challenge me this time, so he came to speak ruthlessly to me. I was speechless at his actions. It seemed that he was addicted to speaking ruthlessly. It was the same during the previous championship. At that time, when I had just sat down at the venue, the first person I saw was him going to speak ruthlessly to Han Wennan. It was a pity that Han Wennan only replied with a scram. I wasn't as domineering as Han Wennan. I just shook my head and smiled. What does it have to do with me, whether you're a genius or not? If you want that Mount Tai seal of yours, you have to fight me to the death. If you could get it back, it's yours. You. Liu Xinjiang was instantly angry. He pointed at me and said angrily, "All right, wait if you have the guts." With that, he let out a cold snort and returned to his seat with his large group of people. After they left, Zhang Wenfei came over and said to me worriedly, "Zhou Yi, why don't you return the Mount Tai seal to him? He's the son of the Liu family. Although the artifact he has might not be as precious as Han Wennan's Heavenly Master artifact, it's definitely not ordinary. If the Liu family really wants to pursue the matter, you'll be at a disadvantage." I smiled and shook my head. Since the Liu family is a big family, they won't be so dishonest. If they want it, they can come and talk to me. I'll definitely return it to them. However, if they really want to use their power to oppress them, although I don't have a strong background, I have a body full of tough bones. But the situation is stronger than the person. Zhang Wenfei, try to persuade me again. Among the big families in the metaphysics world, ancient families like MT Mang's Zhang family and Qinling's Han family are still fine. They will leave some leeway. However, the Liu family is famous for being protective. They can use any method. Why do you have to fight for your honor? I shrugged and continued to smile at him. What methods can they use? At most, I'll find a deep forest to hide after I leave the Metaphysics Society. I don't believe that the Liu family can find me. Zhang Wenfei sighed helplessly after hearing what I said. In the end, he couldn't do anything about it. It wasn't that I had to take the Mount Tai seal for myself, but Liu Xinjiang was really despicable. If he came and talked to me nicely, I would definitely return it to him. However, he was still acting so arrogant. If I were to return it to him, I would despise myself. Furthermore, after hearing that the seal was called the Mount Tai seal, I was suddenly interested. After all, when I first reached the Qi gathering realm, I relied on the dragon vein energy on the Mount Tai stone. What is this Mount Tai seal? I have to find some time to study it. Very soon, President Gu of the Metaphysics Society appeared in the hall and gave a speech on the rostrum. Looking at his amiable smile, I couldn't see any signs of depression after the incident with the dragon vein. Although President Gu was the president, he didn't seem to be in charge. Just like last time, he quickly left the hall after his speech. The remaining work of the Young Phoenix Society was handled by the vice presidents of the Metaphysics Society. There were 2 vice presidents. The first one was a bald, middle-aged man. He looked cold and didn't seem to be easy to get along with. The other one was an old acquaintance of mine, Yang Shilong. Apart from the 2 of them, there were dozens of feng shui masters wearing the black robes of the Metaphysics Society that walked in. Yang Shilong and the other vice president introduced themselves to us on the rostrum. I then found out that the bald, middle-aged man was called Dan Feng. After the 2 of them finished their self-introductions, they didn't say anything else and immediately arranged for the dozens of feng shui masters to sit with our branch teams. They were to protect us during the Dragon Chi baptism. Due to the special circumstances, I had to tell Yang Shilong about my situation first. After he finished distributing the work, he happened to pass by me, and I hastily called out to him. After all, we were old acquaintances, and we had gone through life and death together in the Fire God Temple. Yang Shilong's expression was still amiable as he greeted me with a smile. I considered my tone and briefly told him about my situation. When I spoke, my voice wasn't low, so the people nearby could hear me. Lu Jinyang was probably paying attention to me. After I finished, Yang Shilong frowned and didn't say anything. Lu Jinyang stood up and said to me excitedly, "It turns out that the Tao Qi in your body hasn't stabilized yet. Then why are you still being rude to me? I'm afraid that you won't even be able to reach the pressure point realm this time. Just you wait. During the Young Phoenix Spreading Wings Challenge tomorrow, I'll look for you first. Didn't you want to have a life and death duel with me? Oomph. I'll fight with you then. I'll take back my Mount Tai seal and take your life. Zhou Yi, wash your neck clean and wait." Chapter 135. His words were exactly the same as the despicable means used by the Yunnan branch. It seemed that I didn't wrongly accuse him. Without waiting for me to speak, the hot-tempered Su Shuxing stood up, pointed at Lu Jinyang, and cursed. "You are too shameless. Just now, when Zhou Yi asked you to fight a life and death duel, you were so scared that you didn't dare to say a word. Now that you heard that Zhou Yi can't advance to the pressure point realm for the time being, you immediately became cocky. It's rare to see someone as shameless as you." Lu Jinyang didn't get angry at this time. He just stared at Su Shuxing condescendingly and said disdainfully, "Tomorrow is the Young Phoenix Spreading Wings gathering to learn from each other. What's wrong with me saying that I want to learn from Zhou Yi? If you don't accept it, I will also learn from you tomorrow." "You." Su Shuxing was furious and pointed at Lu Jinyang, speechless. "Shut up." At this time, Yang Shilong finally couldn't listen anymore and scolded loudly. "In public, you are all young and promising feng shui masters, but you are all cursing like shrews. Where is your sense of propriety?" After all, he was the vice president of the Metaphysics Association. Even Lu Jinyang didn't dare to say anything more. He sneered at me and then sat down. After the storm subsided, Yang Shilong frowned and asked me, "Logically speaking, after absorbing enough dragon vein qi, the Tao Qi in your body can be stabilized in at least 3 to 10 days. Why are you different from others?" This problem couldn't be explained. After thinking for a while, I had no choice but to make up a reason. Previously, I offended the people of Miao Jiang and got poisoned. I haven't recovered yet. Every time I axe up, my blood will boil and my Tao Qi will be chaotic. Usually, it doesn't affect me, but during the period of stabilizing my Tao Qi, I often get half the result with twice the effort. That's why I'm slowing down. I wasn't talking nonsense. The Qilin tattoo on my chest was still there, and the Qilin image had become more and more obvious as the Tao Qi in my body increased. Originally, I didn't want others to know about the Qilin Gu, but Yang Shilong's question was suspicious. I was worried that after the Metaphysics Association found out, they would link this to the disappearance of the dragon vein. That was why I had to use the Qilin Gu as a shield. Gu poison? Yang Shilong's expression immediately changed when he heard this. He pondered for a while before nodding and saying, "If it's the effect of the Gu poison, then it makes sense. How about this? You wait for a moment. After I make arrangements for the others, I'll check on your condition and see if there's anything I can do." His words moved me, and I thanked him. Back then, that old Gu woman was extremely strong, and the Qilin Gu was very strange, so I didn't have much hope at all. However, Yang Shilong was the vice president and had the strength of glory of consciousness realm. Even if he couldn't get rid of the Gu poison, it would be good if he could recognize what the Qilin Gu was. Yang Shilong nodded and went to arrange for everyone to undergo the dragon vein baptism. After he left, I glanced at the branch in the capital. I was a little worried. Lu Jinyang was definitely not joking. Since he said so, he would definitely challenge me tomorrow. However, I would still be in the dragon-seeking realm tomorrow while he had already advanced to the acupuncture point realm. How could I compete with him? Am I supposed to avoid it? Just as I thought about it, I shook my head. I definitely couldn't avoid it. I might be able to find an excuse to leave, but the members of the Guangdong branch had to participate. If I didn't appear then, he would definitely find someone to vent his anger on. What should I do? After thinking for half a day, I didn't have any good ideas. Maybe I could only hope that I could stabilize the last pillar of energy in my body before tomorrow. While I was thinking, everyone in the hall had finished their preparations, including the members of the Guangdong branch. They all sat cross-legged on the praying mats that the Metaphysics Society had prepared beforehand. They closed their eyes and concentrated, preparing to undergo the dragon vein baptism. At that moment, Yang Shilong came to my side again and brought me to a spot far away from the others. After ensuring that I wouldn't affect the others, he asked me, "Tell me the symptoms of the goo poison." Symptoms? I really couldn't explain it. I thought for a while and decided to lift my shirt. Yang Shilong was shocked when he saw my action. When he saw the Kirin goo on my chest, he was stunned. His eyes lit up as he stared at me. I thought that he couldn't tell that it was a goo poison, so I prepared to explain it to him. However, before I could say anything, Yang Shilong seemed to suddenly understand. He took a deep breath and asked me, "This is the Kirin goo?" I wasn't scared by his appearance. Instead, I was excited because he recognized the goo poison. I quickly asked him, "Chairman Yang, have you heard of this Kirin goo? Do you know how to cure it?" Yang Shilong's face was solemn. After a moment of silence, he lifted his head and looked at me. He sighed and shook his head. "I can't cure it. Can't cure it? How could it not be cured? Everything in this world has its own counter. No matter how overbearing this goo poison is, it shouldn't be incurable." I quickly asked, "Chairman Yang, what do you mean by that?" Yang Shilong sighed again. "Once the Kirin goo is planted, the host will become the Kirin goo. How can there be a cure?" Then he looked at me with pity. That expression was as if he was looking at a criminal sentenced to death. It made my heart go cold. "Chairman Yang, I don't really understand. Can you explain in detail?" Yang Shilong sat down on the stool at the side and said, "I don't really understand the specifics, but I've heard that the Kirin goo is one of the two great ancestral goo in Miaojiang. It's not just a goo, it's also an ancient cultivation method in Miaojiang. Rumor has it that the person who raises the Kirin goo has to find a cultivation genius to plant the goo. The goo inside the body will grow stronger as one's cultivation deepens. Using us feng shui masters as an example, in the dragon-seeking realm, the Kirin goo will grow horns. In the acupuncture point realm, the Kirin goo will grow scales. In the glorious consciousness realm, the Kirin goo will grow auspicious clouds under its feet. In the end, when the person with the goo reaches the heavenly master realm, he will turn into a fully grown Kirin goo. At that time, the person who planted the goo will be able to reach the heavenly master realm. In ancient times, many people in Miaojiang used this method to cultivate. To cultivate this method, they needed to find a suitable host for the goo. Thus, most of the goo cultivators in Miaojiang traveled thousands of miles to the Central Plains and harmed a large number of young geniuses. Later, the Heavenly Master Realm seniors of the Central Plains Taoism, Buddhism, and our Metaphysics Association were enraged. They joined hands to attack Miaojiang and destroyed all the ancestral goo in the old Miaojiang village. From then on, the power of the Miaojiang people greatly decreased. The two great ancestral goo disappeared without a trace, never to appear again. I was stunned and subconsciously muttered, "The Kirin goo, is actually that famous?" Yang Shilong nodded and said with mixed emotions, "Yes, this matter is very famous in the history of metaphysics. Many people have heard about it, but there hasn't been any news of the ancestral goo for many years. Who did you offend to make one of the two great ancestral goo reappear?" "Who? I didn't know who that old goo woman was. I was confused from the beginning to the end. First, it was Zhaoing. I didn't have the intention to kill her, but the snake spirit swallowed the mother goo and killed Zhaoing. Then it was that old goo woman. It was nothing at first, but when she saw the snake spirit, she went crazy and used that bloody and disgusting method to plant the Kirin goo on me. However, When I thought of the snake spirit, I suddenly remembered that the old goo woman called the snake spirit dragon goo. I thought for a while and asked Yang Shilong, among the two great ancestral goo, what is the other ancestral goo besides the Kirin goo? Yang Shilong's answer was just as I thought. It was the dragon goo. Is the snake spirit also an ancestral goo? But its body is a snake, which is completely different from what Yang Shilong said. I had many questions in my heart, but I didn't ask about the dragon goo. The topic returned to the Kirin goo. After carefully thinking about Yang Shilong's words, I asked him again, since the Kirin goo changes according to the person's cultivation, if the person stops cultivating, the Kirin goo won't be able to grow anymore, right? What's more, after reaching the heavenly master realm, the person will turn into the Kirin goo. Since ancient times, how many cultivators have reached the heavenly master realm? I guess there aren't many people in history who have successfully grown a fully grown Kirin goo, right? Yang Shilong shook his head again and sighed. It's not as simple as you say. The Kirin goo has a time limit. Every 3 years, if the person's realm doesn't increase, the Kirin goo will gradually harden and leave your body to find another host. You have to know that after the Kirin goo is planted, it will be connected to your blood, and its roots will even be in your heart. If the Kirin goo leaves, it means that you're dead. Is it really like what he said? Is there really no cure for the Kirin goo? My complexion worsened. Yang Shilong continued. As for the second question, I'm not too sure. However, according to the rumors, before the Kirin goo's poison takes effect, it can continuously improve the talent of the person who is poisoned. It's actually very helpful for cultivation. Of course, helping the person is actually helping itself. If the person is already talented, with the help of the Kirin goo, there's still hope for him to reach the heavenly master realm. I was even more confused. After reaching the heavenly master realm, won't the person who is poisoned die? Then, why would he spend so much effort to increase his realm? In the end, it's all for someone else's benefit? Yang Shilong finally said the first piece of information that was beneficial to me. According to the rumors, the only way to get rid of the Kirin goo is to use the heavenly master sword to cut off the Kirin goo in your body the moment you become a heavenly master. However, after cutting it off, your heavenly master realm will also be cut off. Those who can reach the heavenly master realm aren't young. After losing their realm, they won't be able to live for long. If that's the case, what's the difference between getting rid of the Kirin goo and not getting rid of it? The reason why I said that there's no way to get rid of it is because of this. Of course, this is just my opinion as an outsider. If you're really poisoned by such a strange goo, you'll die either way. You have to find a way to survive, so you can only cultivate with all your might. After listening to his explanation, I was close to despair. Just like what he said, whether I cultivate or not, I'll have to face death sooner or later. As for finding a way to survive, not to mention how difficult it was to cultivate to the heavenly master realm. Even if I reached that realm and successfully cut off the Kirin goo, I would only be struggling at death's door. All my cultivation would be taken away by the Kirin goo. What's the difference between living and dying? That's too cruel. My voice was hoarse and low. It was extremely unpleasant to listen to. I asked Yang Shilong, President Yang, is there really no other way? Yang Shilong was silent for a while. His expression was slightly hesitant. Then he said, I've heard people say that before you reach the heavenly master realm, you can find a senior in the heavenly master realm to help and use the heavenly master sword to cut off the Kirin goo. However, that would affect the cultivation of the senior in the heavenly master realm. So this method is almost impossible. Apart from that, I've never heard of any other methods. After saying that, he looked at me with even more pity. As for me, I could only smile bitterly. I had never even seen a senior in the heavenly master realm, let alone asking him to help me at the risk of affecting his own cultivation. How is that possible? There is no difference between having such a method and not having such a method. After that, Yang Shilong consoled me with something else, but I didn't hear it clearly. In the end, I returned to my seat in a daze and sat down again. I raised my head blankly and looked at the surrounding people who were working hard to undergo the Dragon Chi baptism. I suddenly lost interest in cultivation. At the end of cultivation, all my power would be used to benefit others. What was the point of that? Yang Shilong said that I had to find a way to seek life in death, but I didn't think so. Between death and living a life worse than death, I would rather choose death. But I wasn't willing to give up. Fatty was still in the Fire God Temple, and I didn't know if he was alive or dead. Red Shadow and I had agreed to meet again in the future. My parents were also at home, hoping that I could bring honor to my ancestors. How could I die? I sat there lifelessly. I didn't know how much time had passed, but the despair in my heart gradually dissipated. Slowly, a firm conviction rose up in my heart. There were 50 Dian numbers, but there was still one that could escape. How could everything be so absolute? Just like the Tao Chi in my body, could Yang Shilong and the rest imagine that I had 5 Tao Chi light pillars? He obviously couldn't. Moreover, I was still far away from the Heavenly Master Realm. According to Yang Shilong's 3 years, I had at least 9 years to think about solving this problem. Not only that, according to my deduction, Red Shadow had agreed to meet me during the glory of consciousness. I didn't know Red Shadow's realm, but I believed that she would definitely be able to help me. Since that was the case, why should I be disheartened now? Didn't Yang Shilong say that the Kirin Gu would change as one's cultivation increased? I wanted to see what would happen to the Kirin Gu when my 5 Tao Chi light pillars advanced to the acupoint ceiling stage. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.